Well, Mr. Speaker, I absolutely agree with my honourable friend. Scotland has always played a crucial role in the UK's defence, and the projects that are supported by this spending, including shipbuilding on the Clyde, will directly benefit the people of Scotland, bringing security and economic benefits. And this level of spending and investment is only possible through Scotland's place in the United Kingdom.
John Lamont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very much welcome the response there from the Secretary of State. But I wonder if he could set out what support the British Army is providing to the Scottish Government to ensure the efficient delivery of the coronavirus vaccine in my constituency in the Borders, but also across Scotland more widely.
Secretary Ridger.
Well, the Scottish Government requested a military planning team to assist with the planning for the rollout of the vaccine in the Borders and across Scotland. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased I was able to approve that request. The scale of the task is very considerable, but the logistics expertise of the British Armed Forces is making a huge difference.
Douglas Ross.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State will be aware of the work that soldiers from Kinloss Barracks in Murray have done throughout this pandemic in our fight against COVID-19. They've been in Liverpool since last month, and earlier this week also started assisting Wirral Borough Council in their community testing programme. This is in addition to the work they did throughout the Highlands and Islands in the summer, covering 80,000 miles and conducting well over 3,000 tests. So will the Secretary of State join me in congratulating everyone at RAF Kinloss for the effort they put in during this pandemic, and agree that it undermines yet again the outstanding work they do in Scotland and across the United Kingdom?
Secretary Ridger.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I absolutely join him in thanking everyone at Kinloss Barracks. At the start of the pandemic, our British Armed Forces distributed essential equipment, they distributed PPE, they helped build hospitals across Scotland, they were instrumental in getting vital equipment to the Glasgow Lighthouse Lab, they operated the mobile testing centres, and currently, as I said to the Honourable Gentleman from Roxburgh Barracks and Selkirk, there are 21 military planners working with Scottish Health Boards and the Scottish Government on logistical planning for vaccine deployment. And our offer remains open. If the Scottish Government require further assistance from our amazing armed forces, they're standing by and they're ready to help.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, it's almost been a year since I was elected, and in all that time we've been assured... Question 9, sorry.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good progress has been made on the Tay Cities regional deal. The Chancellor announced at the spending review on the 25th of November that the UK Government investment will now be compressed to 10 years. We are working with local partners to get the full deal signed on the 17th of December.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's been almost a year since I was elected, and in all that time we've been assured that the Tay Cities deal is just around the corner, and I'm delighted to hear that the deal is over the line. It will be a Christmas present for North East Fife and elsewhere that they've been waiting for some time.
Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful for the Honourable Lady's comments, and I know of her hard work in helping the Eden campus project in particular in her constituency to be a leading part of the deal. I had hoped to be up visiting it a few weeks ago, but unfortunately COVID restrictions precluded that. But I very much look forward to visiting in the new year when circumstances allow.
Let's head up to Scotland to Pete Wishart. Pete Wishart.
And thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I also thank the Minister for the reprofiling of the Tay Cities deal from 15 to 10 years. I think that will really help the projects, but we now need to know when this will be signed. But he will also know that we have an issue with the internationally renowned James Hutton Institute in my constituency. This is primarily a UK government financed project, but its place in the Tay Cities deal has been put in jeopardy because of all the delays. To ensure that it can be started in year one, the Hutton needs the government to draw down its funding early. Will the government do that? If not, how does it intend to ensure this crucial project can be guaranteed?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've had many constructive dialogues with the Right Honourable Gentleman on Tay Cities, and I'm happy to confirm that we look good to go next Thursday to sign the deal. The delay was for a very good reason. As he's alluded to, we were trying to get the UK government side of the deal from 15 years down to 10 years. I'm aware of the specific circumstances at the James Hutton Institute, and I had a very constructive meeting with them on Friday last week, and I can assure that we're exploring every option to make sure that it gets its funding, but so too do all the other very worthwhile projects in the deal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SGN's landmark trial, number 11.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As confirmed in the Prime Minister's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution, the Government is committed to the development of hydrogen as a decarbonised energy carrier for the UK. We are developing our strategic approach to hydrogen and its potential to deliver against our net zero goals, and will set our plans shortly.
Jacob. Thank you, Mr Speaker. SGN's landmark trial for green hydrogen in a new domestic gas network has just secured vital funding from Ofgem to progress this trial. Can I congratulate everyone at SGN and those working on the project in Fife on achieving this? And does the Minister agree with me that innovation like this and the H21 project in Teesside, which is led by NGN, prove the UK is leading the world in the hydrogen economy?
I can certainly agree with my honourable friend, and I congratulate him and his APPG, of which he is chair, on their work advancing the hydrogen agenda. And I so too congratulate SGN on achieving up to £18 million from Ofgem's Network Innovation Competition to support development of a hydrogen demonstration network in Leavenworth, bringing carbon-free energy to around 300 homes from late 2022.
Stephen Flynn.
Question 12, please.
Secretary General.
Mr Speaker, I have frequent discussions with Cabinet colleagues on the UK Internal Market Bill, which is vital to protect seamless trade and jobs across all four corners of the United Kingdom following the end of the transition period.
Stephen Flynn.
Of course, what the Secretary of State did not say there is that the Internal Market Bill is a blatant attack on devolution. But that should not come as a surprise, Mr Speaker, because just 3 weeks ago, the Prime Minister said that devolution was Tony Blair's biggest mistake, a bigger mistake than even the illegal Iraq war. So I ask the Secretary of State, does he disagree with the Prime Minister?
Well, what the Prime Minister said was that devolution was a mistake when it was set up to be put in the hands of separatists, and I completely agree with that. I totally agree with that. The Scottish National Party is a campaigning organisation for independence, for separation of the United Kingdom, masquerading as a party of government.
Let's head up to Scotland to SNP spokesperson Murray Blight. Murray Blight.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Secretary of State has regularly explained that as we leave the EU, the Internal Market Bill will serve to strengthen the UK's economy and the Union as a whole. So does he feel that the announcement yesterday from the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster that Northern Ireland will have the best of both worlds, meaning Northern Ireland will still have access to both EU and UK markets after Brexit, does he feel that this has undermined his claims about the Internal Market Bill?
Secretary General.
No, not remotely. What we've delivered on is unfettered access. We promised unfettered access at the time of the withdrawal agreement, and we've delivered it.
Returning to Murray Blight. Murray Blight.
As the Secretary of State knows, Scotland voted to remain in the EU, and the Scottish Government subsequently published a framework for how Scotland could still have access to the single market post-Brexit, and this was outright rejected by the UK Government. So given that Northern Ireland has been promised the very same thing, will he now make the case for Scotland to get the same concessions? And like his predecessor, will he consider his position if no such request is granted?
Well, through the fortunate position of Scotland being part of the United Kingdom, it doesn't have a land border that it needs to worry about. But with Northern Ireland, the situation is different. It's special circumstances, and we've resolved the problem as we promised we would.
Remaining in Scotland, we go over to Hannah Bowdell. Hannah Bowdell.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The Secretary of State would do well to remember that the SNP is a democratically elected party of government in Scotland. And although we take nothing for granted, pollsters continue to suggest the SNP will win a majority of seats in the Holyrood elections this coming May, and 15 consecutive polls show a clear majority mandate for Scottish independence. So does the Secretary of State believe that his government's disastrous internal market bill has contributed to this rise in support for the SNP and Scottish independence?
Mr Speaker, there's nothing disastrous about a UK internal market bill that has mutual recognition and non-discrimination at its base, that protects jobs in Scotland, protects people's livelihoods, when 60% of Scotland's trade is to the rest of the United Kingdom, worth over £50 billion, and as the Fraser-Vanda Institute said only last week, worth 554,000 jobs.
Mark Fletcher. I think that was a bit too early. Would the Minister like to answer this substantive question? And then I can bring in Shadow Minister Elmore.
The Secretary of State and I have frequent discussions with colleagues on the opportunities for COP26. This includes through the COP26 Devolved Administration Ministerial Group, which brings a COP President, Territorial Secretaries of State and the Devolved Administration Ministers together to ensure effective engagement and collaboration on COP26 and net zero.
We now go to Shadow Minister Christopher.
I'm exceedingly grateful, Mr. Speaker, for allowing the Minister to answer the question. COP26 in Glasgow, as the Minister knows, is no ordinary summit. It's a huge opportunity to set the global agenda we need to tackle the climate emergency. The government has so far, in my opinion, not afforded it the attention and weight it requires. That's got to change, and I'd argue urgently, to make this summit the success the planet needs it to be. Cutting overseas aid has had a devastating effect for those countries on the front line of the climate emergency. This will undermine our role as hosts of COP26, as well as our international standing and moral authority around the world. What steps is the Scottish Office taking to ensure that as hosts of COP26, we are leading by example and not turning our back on those who are living on the front line of the climate emergency?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for his question. I would point out that we will still be one of the world's largest net donors to the most deprived communities around the world, and that commitment remains absolute. We will be working through the next months to make sure that COP26 in Glasgow is as big a success as it can be. We will lead the global climate change agenda, and I can't think of anything anywhere better than my home city of Glasgow to be the showcase for that. And there are lots of partners, from very small local companies right up to big multinationals, who will be playing a part, and my colleagues and I will be engaging with them very much over the next few months.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 18 and 19 together. I have regular conversations with the Scottish Government on preparedness for the end of the transition period, including meetings of the EU Exit Operations Cabinet Committee and the Joint Ministerial Committee on EU negotiations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my right honourable friend for that answer. He will agree with me, I know, that the Scottish Government have failed to prepare for the end of the transition deal and are letting down the Scottish people, in particular by failing to recruit the required number of environmental protection officers to assist our fishing industry as we leave the transition deal at the end of this year. Will he confirm that the British Government stands ready to assist the Scottish Government, should they require it, to get the required number of protection officers in place to support our fishing industry?
Well, as my honourable friend knows, it's the Scottish Government's responsibility to ensure adequate certifier capacity for exports to the European Union. The UK Government's been engaging closely with the Scottish Government, the Food Standards Scotland, and Scottish local authorities to clarify the capacity in Scotland for certifying export health certificates, and with them we've determined the level of additional capacity that's needed. That's the sort of boring answer. I would further add, Mr. Speaker, that we have provided the Scottish Government with £138 million of Brexit preparedness support for this purpose.
Gavin Newland.
DDB, Mr. Speaker, let's try this one. NHS Tayside have stated that a hard Brexit could lead to an inability to deliver safe and effective care, and NHS Lanarkshire said Brexit is a very high risk to the delivery of healthcare services. We also know that the MOD are putting plans in place to fly the Pfizer vaccine into the UK to avoid the government's entirely self-inflicted border post chaos. Given we didn't vote for any of this, and the current polling showing support for independence for 15 polls in a row, does the Secretary of State still believe that the Union is firing on all cylinders, as he wrote at the weekend?
The Union is absolutely firing on all cylinders. Whether it's the support of over 900,000 jobs in Scotland, whether it's the UK Government procuring and supplying and paying for all the vaccines for the United Kingdom, whether it's the armed forces helping with the rollout, and as regards the scare story he's trying to start over MOD flying vaccine into the United Kingdom. All good governments have robust contingency plans. That's number 5 on the list of contingency plans. And they're not just for the transition period outcome. Those contingency plans could be for strikes, could be for weather events, etc., etc. It's entirely responsible to plan that way.
Stuart Hudson.
The end of the transition period has been described by Scottish businesses as a catastrophic situation. Some have argued that if they can't trade with the EU, they're out of the game, an existential threat. So can I ask the Scottish Secretary to actually show some authority on the Cabinet and insist there is a minimum 6-month grace period so that businesses do not fall foul of regulations which are not yet developed for a deal that is not yet agreed, but which is supposed to be in place in barely 3 weeks' time. This needs to be done. It needs to be done today, otherwise businesses will struggle dreadfully on his watch.
Well, I'd say to the honourable gentleman that there's been a major public information campaign running for businesses and citizens, telling them exactly what they need to do. And we've always been clear, whether it's deal or no deal, there are steps that have to be taken when the transition period comes to an end. We're not going to delay the end of the transition period because it's only by sticking to that date people can prepare responsibly, and it's also holds the, if you like, the EU's feet to the fire in getting a deal. So we've been clear what the measures they need to take. They need to look at the UK government website and they can see very clear what preparations they need to make for the end of this month.
Tamanjeet Singh Desi.
Number 21, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions. Sorry, that's not. I'm not going to answer questions 1 and 2 again. Questions 21 and 22 together. An effective response to COVID-19 does indeed need to be a coordinated response across the whole United Kingdom and informs every aspect of the UK Government's response. For instance, on 24th November, the UK Government and the 3 devolved administrations published a joint statement on UK-wide arrangements for the festive season, and we are currently working with the devolved administrations on the deployment of vaccines and community testing across the UK.
Tamanjeet Singh Desi.
Mr. Speaker, last month an opinion poll revealed that 68% of Scots want the Scottish and UK governments to work more closely together. So, Minister, why is it that, despite that the Scottish and UK governments are not able to work in a coordinated manner? Why are we constantly seeing mixed messages and infighting?
Well, it's not for me. I would guess, I would state that what mixed messages you might see in the press or from political parties, for example. But it is the case that the UK governments and all assemblies across the whole UK do work together on a coordinated basis to deliver not just what's been delivered up to now, but the excellent news yesterday of the first vaccines being provided across the whole UK, not in one part of the UK or another, but across the UK on the same day. Vaccines are an excellent example of that cooperation between the UK government and the devolved administrations. The UK government is procuring vaccines on behalf of the UK as a whole. The prioritisation of the vaccines is a devolved matter. But
I'm just going to go to the next question. I've got Andrew Gwynn waiting in Greater Manchester. Andrew Gwynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The news of the vaccine's approval is incredibly encouraging, but we now face the greatest organisational challenge, perhaps since the Second World War, in distributing it to all who want and need it across the 4 UK nations. Given the botched rollout of the flu vaccine in Scotland this year, how's he going to make sure that Scottish ministers are able to get the delivery of the COVID vaccine right?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and conscious of time, very brief answer to that. The local deployment of the vaccines is indeed a devolved matter, but the Ministry of Defence ministers have made military planners available to the Scottish Government to facilitate the complex task of mass deployment.
Thank you. We're now going to head over to questions to the Prime Minister, in which I now call the Prime Minister to answer questions from Sir Edward Lee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Forgive me, Mr. Speaker. I visited yesterday Guy's and St Thomas Hospital to see the first clinically approved vaccine being given to people in London, as it is now across this country. This is a fantastic moment for all of us in this House, and I know that everybody will want to join me in thanking the NHS, the Vaccine Task Force, the scientists, all the volunteers who've made this possible. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Excellent. Sir Edward Lee.
When I was a spear carrier in the Brexit referendum, that campaign led by my right honourable friend, we assured the British people that a trade deal was entirely achievable. So can I urge my right honourable friend to make one last effort? And surely that deal is achievable because we have no intention of lowering our standards. But the EU should know this, that if consistent with national security, he cannot secure that deal for us, this parliamentary party will back him to the hilt because strength comes with unity.
Well, I thank my right honourable friend, and he's entirely right that a good deal is still there to be done, and I look forward to discussing it with Commissioner von der Leyen tonight. But I must tell the House that our friends in the EU are currently insisting that if they pass a new law in the future with which we in this country do not comply or don't follow suit, then they want the automatic right, Mr. Speaker, to punish us and to retaliate. And secondly, they're saying that the UK should be the only country in the world not to have sovereign control over its fishing waters. And I don't believe, Mr. Speaker, that those are terms that any Prime Minister of this country should accept. But I must tell the House and reassure my right honourable friend that whether the terms on which we deliver our new trading arrangements, whether the new arrangements resemble those of Australia's with the EU or whether they're like those of Canada with the EU, I have absolutely no doubt that from January the 1st, this country is going to prosper mightily, Mr. Speaker.
Let us go over to the Leader of the Opposition, the Right Honourable Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I join with the Prime Minister in his comments about the vaccine rollout? It was fantastic to see the first person, Margaret Keenan, receive the vaccine yesterday. It's a huge national effort, and I want to thank everybody who's been involved with it. Mr. Speaker, can I also thank you and the House authorities for enabling me to participate today, notwithstanding the fact that I'm self-isolating. Mr. Speaker, a year ago, the Prime Minister stood on the steps of Downing Street and promised the country, these were his words, a permanent break from talking about Brexit. Can the Prime Minister tell us, how's that going?
I'm delighted to welcome the right honourable gentleman from his vantage point of exile in Islington and wish him all his spiritual home and wish him all the best in his self-isolation. But I can tell him that his own silence on this matter has been sphinx-like. I think I wonder quite what it is, Mr. Speaker, that has kept him from asking this question for so long. We delivered Brexit, Mr. Speaker, on January the 31st, in case he failed to notice.
Going back to Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, it's Camden, not Islington. Camden. And the Prime Minister starts straight away by deflecting. Same old, whether it's COVID or Brexit. 12 months ago, he told the British people that he had an oven-ready deal. He didn't say he had half a deal. He didn't say the next stage will be very, very difficult. In fact, he told the British people, this was before the election, he faced them and he told them, these were his words, that the chances of no deal were absolutely zero. And the now Chancellor obviously took him at his word, because the Chancellor said in the run-up to the election, we won't need to plan for no deal because we have a deal. So a year on, why should anyone who trusted the Prime Minister when he said he had a deal, including his Chancellor apparently, believe a word that he says now?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I hesitate to accuse the right honourable gentleman of deliberately trying to mislead people, but let's be in no doubt that we had an oven-ready deal, which was the withdrawal agreement, by which the people voted for, as he rightly points out, by which this country left the customs union, left the single market, and delivered on our promises. And I can tell him that whatever happens, and you must know this, Mr. Speaker, that whatever happens from January the 1st, this country will be able to get on with our points-based immigration system, which we have put into law in fulfilment of our manifesto commitment. We'll be able to get on with instituting free ports, low-tax free ports in places where jobs and growth are most needed around the country. We'll be able to honour our promise to the British people and institute higher animal welfare standards, and we'll be able to do free trade deals, and we'll get our money back as well, Mr. Speaker. I don't know what else he wants to see from January the 1st, but all those things will be delivered.
Returning to Camden with Keir Starmer.
I see, Mr. Speaker. Apparently, get Brexit done just meant the first part of it, the easy bit. I don't remember that being written on the bulldozer at the time. Mr. Speaker, last September, the Prime Minister actually hit the nail on the head when he said that leaving without a deal would be, in his words, a failure of statecraft. It would. It would be a total failure. And it will be the British people who pay the price. Does the Prime Minister agree with his own spending watchdog, the OBR, that the cost of that failure, of leaving the EU with no deal, would be higher unemployment, higher inflation, and a smaller economy?
Mr. Speaker, the more he talks about Brexit, the more I can see why he tried to avoid the subject for the last for the last year. We did leave with a very good deal, and under any circumstances, this country will prosper mightily. And I may say to the right honourable gentleman, when he talks about the possible adverse consequences for this country of a deal on Australian terms, which I think is what he's talking about, we have yet to hear from the Labour Party what their view is of that matter. Would they vote for it? Yes or no? I mean, he remained totally Delphic last week, Mr. Speaker, about his policy on fighting coronavirus. He's totally Delphic about what to do on Brexit as well.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister talks about indecision. He is absolutely stuck. This is the truth of it. He's absolutely stuck and dithering between the deal he knows that we need and the compromise he knows his backbenchers won't let him do. Mr. Speaker, I genuinely hope this is the usual Prime Minister's bluster and that, like one of his newspaper columns, a deal arrives at the last minute. But for some people and their jobs, it's already too late. Yesterday, Ineos, a major employer in this country, announced that they will not now build a new Grenadier car in Bridgend and will move production to France instead. This is a project that just 2 months ago, the Prime Minister said was a vote of confidence. So hundreds of skilled jobs now won't go to Bridgend. Can the Prime Minister tell us how many more British jobs have to go overseas before he gets on with delivering the Brexit deal that he promised?
Mr. Speaker, I think it's a bit much of the Leader of the Opposition to criticise the government for failure to come up with a policy on Brexit, when he can't even, and a bit much for him to attack the putative consequences of coming out on Australian terms, when he can't even say whether he would vote for that deal, yes or no. If he can't say whether he would vote for our deal, yes or no, then he can't. Then I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, he simply cannot attack the government's policy until he is able to come up with a position of his own, Mr. Speaker, wrap a towel round his head, decide what he actually thinks. I find it very difficult to take his criticisms seriously, but what I can say is that this country will be ready for whether we have a Canadian or an Australian solution, and there will be jobs created in this country throughout the whole of the UK, not just in spite of Brexit, but because of Brexit, because this country is going to become a magnet for overseas investment. Indeed, it already is and will remain so.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister asked me how I'll vote on a deal that he hasn't even secured. Secure the deal, Prime Minister. You promised it. And I can say this, Mr. Speaker, if there is a deal, and I hope there's a deal, then my party will vote in the national interest, not on party political lines, as he is doing. Mr. Speaker, this is about leadership. The Prime Minister has done 15 U-turns. He's had 5 different plans on Brexit or on COVID. And last week, 53 of his own MPs voted against it. So if I were him, I wouldn't talk about leadership. The Prime Minister hasn't always wanted to listen to business. We know what his message to business is, but he should listen to them. Let me quote the CBI. They say the message for business is this: get a deal quickly. Then there's the National Farmers Union. Time is running out, they say. It's very hard to get the final preparations. These are the people the Prime Minister should be listening to, not his backbenchers. And on the question of preparation, the government knew months ago that it needed 50,000 customs agents trained and ready to go from the 1st of January, deal or no deal. So can the Prime Minister tell the House how many of the 50,000 agents will be in place on the 1st of January? That's 23 days' time.
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's wonderful to get the end of that question. I can tell him that we've invested £1 billion already in getting this country ready for whatever the trading relationship is that we have on January the 1st, and 84 million into supporting customs agents across the UK, 200 million into supporting our ports, and they're doing an amazing. And I want to thank business for the incredible job they're doing of getting ready. We've all got to get ready, because under any view there is going to be change from January the 1st. There will be a change in the way we do business. There will be more opportunities for this country around the world. And I'm delighted by what I take as the increasing signalling I'm getting from Camden. I apologise, Mr. Speaker. The message from Camden seems to be that actually, given the choice, the right honourable gentleman would vote for a deal rather than not. Did you get that impression? I think I did.
Hopefully we can have the final question a little shorter. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I take it that the answer is the Prime Minister has no idea whether the 50,000 customs agents will be in place on the 1st of January. He either doesn't know or he doesn't care. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said he had a deal. He didn't. He said he would protect jobs. He didn't. He said he'd prepare for any outcome. He hasn't. And whatever may happen in the next few days, there's no doubting that his incompetence has held Britain back. So will he end this charade, end the uncertainty, get the deal that he promised, and allow the country to move on?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the right honourable gentleman for his final baffling question. Last week, he as I say, Sphinx-like, avoided any pronouncement on how this country was going to fight COVID. He refused to support the measures that we have put in place. This week, he remains deafeningly silent on what he really thinks about a Brexit deal. While he puts a cold towel round his head, Mr. Speaker, lost in thought, tries to work out what his position is, we are getting on...
To order. Mr. Bryant. Mr. Bryant. I suggest the whip goes and has a word with him. We're not having that disgraceful behaviour. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think you should summon him back. He seems to have vanished. But while the right honourable gentleman tries to work out what his position is, we're getting on with the work of government. And it's as he says, it's a year since his People's Government was elected, and I'm very proud that we're delivering on the people's priorities. 6,000 of the 20,000 police officers, Mr. Speaker, 14,800 of the 50,000 nurses already, and we're getting on with building every one of the 40 hospitals, in fact 48 hospitals, that we're going to deliver, along with the biggest programme of infrastructure investment in this country for a century, uniting and levelling up across the whole of the UK. And whether the outcome is Canada or whether it's Australia, Mr. Speaker, we will be taking back control. And we have already taken back control of our money, our borders and our laws, and we will seize all the opportunities that Brexit brings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Coronation Street's 60th anniversary. It's the world's longest-running TV drama serial. This is an amazing landmark, so congratulations to it. But sometimes it feels we've been discussing infrastructure in the north almost as long. However, we've had the Oakview report recommending The government committed to HS2 and its full Y-shaped network serving both sides of the Pennines. We've had the positive decision to proceed with it. So as the plans for the eastern leg of HS2 Phase 2B are developed, will my right honourable friend consider starting construction from the north? That will be good for jobs in the north, connectivity with the East Midlands, and all of which, of course, drive my right honourable friend's levelling up agenda.
My honourable friend is a big expert in this field and a great campaigner for transport, and he's right about the massive impact that these programmes can have on jobs. And he said, "I'm sorry,
Mr. Bryant, I think we need this conversation later." Fine, Prime Minister.
Yes, well, I was saying, Mr. Speaker, that my honourable friend is completely right about the power of great infrastructure projects to deliver jobs, and that's why we're getting on both with the eastern leg of HS2 and with Northern Powerhouse Rail. And what I've asked the National Infrastructure Commission and Network Rail to look at is how those two projects can best be integrated to boost the economy of the whole of the north of the country.
Let's head up to Scotland to the leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford. Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, by this government's own admission, it was confirmed that Northern Ireland is getting the best of both worlds, access to the EU single market and customs union. This is great news for businesses in Northern Ireland, but it leaves Scotland, who also voted to remain, dealing with the hardest of Brexits. What is good for Northern Ireland, Mr. Speaker, is surely good enough for Scotland. Why is Scotland being shafted by this double dealing? Can the Prime Minister explain to Scottish businesses why this is fair?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in common with the whole of the rest of the United Kingdom, Scotland will benefit from the substantial access of devolved powers for Scotland, and will benefit from the regaining of money, borders and laws. And as I never tire of telling my friend, the gentleman opposite, in spite of all his jeering, Mr. Speaker, Scotland will take back control of colossal quantities of fish, which I think is something that the people of Scotland deserve to be able to exploit for the advantage of those communities.
Ian Blackford, second question.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister can spin all he likes, but everyone can now see the total contempt this UK government holds for Scottish interests. Northern Ireland gets the single market and customs union. We get nothing. Members of his Scottish branch office told him how unfair and damaging it would be to deny Scotland's access to the EU single market and customs union, whilst at the same time delivering it for Northern Ireland. Ruth Davidson even said that such an act would undermine the integrity of the United Kingdom. The former Scottish Tory Constitution spokesperson said it would be the end of the union. They, along with the former Scottish Secretary, said that if this were to happen, they would all resign. So, Mr. Speaker, since the Prime Minister is ready to sell out Scotland's interests with his Brexit deal, does he expect to receive these resignation letters from Baroness Davidson or her cohorts before or after he travels to Brussels tonight?
Well, I think, Mr. Speaker, the only reasonable answer to that question is I think it's highly unlikely that those letters will arrive. And I think he does gross injustice to Scotland, to the future of Scotland, which will be assured within the single market of the United Kingdom. And I believe, in spite of the slight negativity I detect from him, I believe Scotland, as long with the rest of the UK, will benefit from a very strong trading relationship with our friends and partners across the Channel, whatever the circumstances, whatever the terms we reach tonight.
Julie Malson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am supporting Turn on the Subtitles, a campaign being led by my Bishop Stortford constituent, Henry Warren. There is a wealth of evidence that default same-language subtitling can have a dramatic effect on children's literacy, particularly for disadvantaged children, which I know is a great priority for my right honourable friend, given the potential impact of COVID on the attainment gap. Will the Prime Minister support a government consultation to turn on the subtitles to really explore this potentially transformative opportunity?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure I speak for many honourable members when I say I'm a massive supporter of subtitles myself, particularly with some of these crime dramas from America, and I know that, and I think her campaign is excellent, and I can tell her that all the departments that have a stake in this will be working with her to see what we can do to take the matter further.
Let's head down to Brighton Pavilion with Caroline Lucas. Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Last week, we learnt that UK Export Finance has been approached to back the East African crude oil pipeline. This is a climate catastrophe that will produce emissions equivalent to all of the UK's annual flights. Not only that, but a recent PQ response to me confirmed that UKEF has 6 more fossil fuel projects under consideration. So ahead of the Climate Ambition Summit this weekend, how can the Prime Minister claim any climate credibility whilst ploughing public money into dirty fossil fuel projects overseas? Are these the actions of a rogue, out-of-control government department? Or worse, does the Prime Minister actually approve of them?
Mr. Speaker, the right honourable lady, I hope, knows that we're moving away dramatically and at speed from UK export finance to support for fossil fuel exploration around the world. But of course, hydrocarbons remain a significant industry in Scotland and many other places. And insofar as there are legitimate contracts that are at risk of being frustrated, then we can't do that. But I really think her criticism of the government is absurd. When you look at the overall record, the ambition of this government, the first country in the developed world to set a target of net zero by 2050. I know actually when she's being less polemical, she's had some kind words to say about the government's programme, and I certainly support her in that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my right honourable friend confirm that our future immigration policy will welcome law-abiding citizens of other countries to our country? Those who come to this country and are subsequently convicted of serious crimes, including rape and murder, should expect to be removed from this country to keep our citizens safe.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, indeed, I was astounded to see that 42 members on the opposite benches wrote to the Home Secretary opposing the deportation of foreign national criminals, whilst the leader of the party opposite maintained his characteristic Delphic silence on the matter, Mr. Speaker.
David Linden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Why does the Prime Minister think we've now seen 15 consecutive polls showing majority support for Scottish independence?
Mr. Speaker, the people of Scotland, as the honourable gentleman knows very well, voted in 2014 by a substantial majority to remain in the UK. I believe that was the right decision, and I believe that were they ever to be asked in the future the same question again, I believe it would be the same answer. But as he has said, and as the gentleman opposite have said many times, it was a once-in-a-generation event, Mr. Speaker.
Let's head to Stafford with Field Clark. Field Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Staffordshire is currently in Tier 3, so unfortunately, due to restrictions, many local businesses are either unable to open or having to operate differently, which is having significant impact on my constituents' lives and livelihoods. So will the Prime Minister commit to providing sufficient testing in Staffordshire to help us to get out of Tier 3 as soon as possible? And will my right honourable friend assure me he will do all he can to support businesses and protect jobs in Stafford, as well as creating new employment opportunities for young people after December 31st?
Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend. And number one, yes, of course, we will do everything we can with NHS Test and Trace, plus our armed forces, to roll out community testing in Stafford. And number two, of course, we want to support Stafford and the people of Stafford with a massive programme of business support, including nearly 1.4 million bounce-back loans and grants, rate relief and VAT deferrals.
Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will fully appreciate that the use of gross domestic product as a measure is abstract in terms of dealing and understanding prosperity. but people talk about 15% drop in GDP as a result of the pandemic. If you look at a simple analysis of car sales as an indicator of economic performance, relative to Germany, we've lost 184,000 car sales in the UK, or versus France, 100,000. Behind those numbers, which are big hits of PLC, UK PLC, are jobs and businesses. How does the Prime Minister explain this relative economic performance?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the government of this country has done everything we can to support business and support our lives and livelihoods throughout this pandemic, and it remains the case with more than 200, I think now 260 billion pounds of support, and it remains the case as he mentions France and Germany. He should know, Mr. Speaker, that unemployment, in spite of all the difficulties this country has faced, unemployment remains lower in this country than France, than Italy, than Spain, and the United States. So, yes, it's tough, but we're going to get through it, and we're going to get through it together.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I commend my right honourable friend's bold 10-point plan for a clean, green industrial revolution and ask for his support to help me deliver a 26-hectare renewable energy manufacturing hub at Oldside in the Port of Workington, continuing to deliver on our promises 12 months ago when I turned Workington blue.
Excellent. Yeah. Prime Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend and I congratulate him on his achievement and on his anniversary, Mr. Speaker. What we're looking very seriously, the Department of BEIS is looking at the programme, the project that he mentions, and I know that the department is going to be assessing that application very carefully and will keep him informed.
Let's head up to Scotland with Pete Wishart. Pete Wishart.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister didn't quite answer my honourable friend from Glasgow East on why support for independence is so high. So maybe I can tempt him with a couple of reasons. Firstly, the leadership of the First Minister, which the Scots contrast with him. Then there's his crazy, chaotic Brexit, a Brexit that Scotland didn't vote for. But it's also down to him personally. He is probably the biggest single recruiting sergeant that we have. And for that, we mightily thank him. So can I ask him, on behalf of all of us who want to see an independent Scotland, could you please take a bow and accept our many thanks?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to accept the thanks of the honourable gentleman, but I may say that I think it's really thanks to him and to the Scottish Nationalist Party that we've been able to keep our wonderful United Kingdom together, because it's the sheer incoherence of their position, their refusal to address the tough questions of what breaking up the UK really means, the impacts on our budgets, on our economy, the impacts on Scotland, the impacts on our whole country. It's their manifest inability to explain what they actually mean, Mr. Speaker, that meant the people of this country Scotland voted in 2014 to remain part of the UK. They're right then, and they'll be right in the future to stay.
Let's head up to Harrow with Bob Blackman. Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is now 3.5 years since the Grenfell fire tragedy that cost the lives of 72 people. Yet there are still 3.6 million leaseholders living in potentially dangerous, unsaleable and unmortgageable properties. The government quite rightly set aside £1 billion towards the remediation of non-ACM cladding. But this expires on the 31st of December this year. And it's clear that it's going to be insufficient to cover the costs. So could my right honourable friend set out for the House what the plan is for next year to remediate the cladding, and will he give a cast iron guarantee that leaseholders will not have to pay a penny piece towards the cost of replacing this unsafe cladding?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right to draw attention to this injustice and what's happening with leaseholders at the moment. That's why we put 1.6 billion into removing unsafe cladding. I don't want to see leaseholders being forced to pay for this remediation, and I can assure my honourable friend we're looking now urgently before the expiry of the current arrangements at what we can do to take them forward, support leaseholders who I think are in a very unfair position.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister aware that his government risks failing a generation of children in my constituency of Enfield North and across the country, as we've seen, as the analysis shows this week, that only 1 in 6 pupils on free school meals who are most likely to fall behind their peers will benefit from the programmes to help them catch up on lost learning as a result of COVID. Does the Prime Minister agree that this is simply not good enough? And can he explain why we are in this dire situation 9 months on?
Prime Minister.
Well, I share her anxiety about the impact of differential learning on kids in our schools across the country, because there's no doubt that different groups have been affected in different ways by the pandemic. That's why we put £1 billion or more now into the catch-up funds. But it's also why it's so important to make sure that kids do go to school and do stay in school, and that's why we put all the emphasis that we have throughout this pandemic on maintaining kids in school, even if it's put pressure on the hospitality sector and other parts of our economy.
Michael Longy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I wonder if my right honourable friend, if he were to find a small gap in his very, very busy diary, if he would join me on a visit to the Black Country Living Museum, where I would introduce him to a plate of Black Country battered chips, to a pint of Holden's Golden Glow, and on all of this after he has actually reviewed the arrangements the museum has made to become a COVID vaccination centre.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that the Black Country Living Museum has become is in line to be a COVID vaccination centre, and I look forward to I've had many happy meetings with him in the Black Country, and as a proud former resident of Bilston, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to returning before too long.
Mr. Speaker, I know you're a strong supporter of the Falklands Islands. The Falkland Islands face the prospect of their fisheries exports to the European Union being subject to tariffs of between 6 and 18% from the 1st of January. Fisheries exports to the European Union account for over 40% of the island's gross domestic product and up to 60% of their government's revenue. This poses a serious challenge to the Falkland Islands. Will the Prime Minister raise this matter when he meets with the President of the European Commission later?
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, and he's right to raise the issue of the Falkland Islands and indeed other Crown territories and overseas dependencies around the world whose future trading arrangements must be secured, and that is indeed something that we have raised and will continue to raise on their behalf and make sure that they get the satisfactory assurances that they need.
Let's head up to Hertfordshire with Sir Oliver Heald. Sir Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister is aware of the continuing concern in rural communities such as those in North East Hertfordshire about intentional, unauthorised development where suddenly caravans appear on land without planning permission. Many of my constituents and I support Proposal 24 in the Planning White Paper, which proposes new powers for councils to tackle this. Will the Prime Minister put his authority behind this so these changes can be made as soon as possible?
I do indeed, Mr. Speaker, and I think that everybody in the House recognises the distress that unauthorised encampments can cause to local communities. My right honourable friend is right to draw attention to this. He's right also to call attention to the new powers we're giving both to police and to councils to tackle the matter, and I'm glad of his support.
Sig McCabe.
Could the Prime Minister kindly explain to the people of Tier 3 Birmingham, population over 1 million and where almost 2,000 have lost their lives, why he doesn't consider them a priority for receipt of the vaccine?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I really must respectfully disagree with the honourable gentleman. The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation has set out very clear criteria of the groups, that starting with those over 80, the care homes workers, NHS workers, those in care homes. He knows the criteria very well, and Birmingham, of course, will be amongst them. Of course, that's right. I'm afraid I simply cannot accept the premise of his question.
Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Conservative colleagues across Derbyshire have been working very hard on our bid for community testing to help us tackle COVID. Will my right honourable friend ensure the bid from Derbyshire County Council receives the resources and attention that we need to help us in our fight to get out of Tier 3?
Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and I was discussing Derbyshire's bid just this morning for a big community testing programme, and we will do everything we can, obviously, to support him. I thank him and local leaders for what they're doing to promote community testing.
Let's head up to Yorkshire with Richard Bergen. Richard Bergen.
Mr. Speaker, real terms pay cuts for millions of public sector workers, an insulting 37p increase in benefits levels, and broken promises on minimum wage increases show the Prime Minister wants to pay for this crisis on the backs of the working class. Wouldn't it be fairer to impose a windfall tax on the wealth of the super rich and on those who've made super profits out of the COVID crisis, including those who've won contracts because of their links to top Tories?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I must again strongly disagree with what the honourable gentleman says, because everybody on this side of the House is proud not just of the living wage, but of record increases in the living wage, above inflation pay rises across the board, and of course we're proud of what we've done to support nurses and the NHS, a record investment in the NHS. I don't think anybody looking at the investments this government has made in the public sector could doubt our commitment, and we will continue to do that, Mr. Speaker. But what we want to see is our economy recovering and our strong and dynamic private sector, which he disparages, enabling this country to forge forward as it should.
Sakib Bhatti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been almost 12 months since I and many of my colleagues were elected to this House for the first time. And it was a great privilege to deliver my maiden speech in the second reading of the Environment Bill and be on the Bill Committee for this landmark piece of legislation. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that not only is protecting the environment a moral duty, but it presents an economic opportunity, including the creation of jobs for my constituents in Meriden?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's crucial to understand that the 10-point plan for the green industrial revolution is about jobs, jobs, jobs. This plan, whether it's retrofitting homes or making wind turbines, Mr. Speaker, will generate 250,000 jobs across this country in just the first few years.
Manjeet Singh Desi.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, many constituents, especially those emanating from the Punjab and other parts of India, and I were horrified to see footage of water cannon, tear gas and brute force being used against peacefully protesting farmers. However, it was heartwarming to see those very farmers feeding those forces who had been ordered to beat or suppress them. What indomitable spirit, and it takes a special kind of people to do that. So will the Prime Minister convey to the Indian Prime Minister our heartfelt anxieties, our hopes for a speedy resolution to the current deadlock, and does he agree that everyone has a fundamental right to peaceful protest?
Prime Minister.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, and our views, the right honourable gentleman knows, as the honourable gentleman knows well, is of course that we have serious concerns about what is happening between India and Pakistan, but these are preeminently matters for those two governments to settle, and I know that he appreciates that point.
James Wilde.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Kings Lynn is at the heart of our local community, but it's in need of urgent modernisation, with cracks in the concrete roof, most recently leading to the closure of the physiotherapy gym. So with his enthusiasm for building hospitals, can my right honourable friend offer the people of West Norfolk hope and back our bid and build our future hospital?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my honourable friend for his campaign and everything he does for his constituents. What I can tell him is that the bid process for the remaining 8 hospitals is currently being designed. That's the 8 of the on top of the 40, and the DHSC is working with a variety of trusts, including Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Kings Lynn, NHS Trust, as this work continues.
Yeah. Can I just gently say to the Prime Minister, next week there'll be the final one before Christmas of PMQs. Would he update the House on the leak inquiry? It will be helpful. Thank you, Prime Minister. In order to allow the safe exit of honourable members participate in this item of business and the safe arrival of those participating in the next, I'm suspending the House for 3 minutes. Order. Order. I now call Minister Michael Gove to make a statement. Secretary Gove.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'd like to update the House and indeed the people of Northern Ireland on the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol as part of the withdrawal agreement with the European Union. Throughout 2020, we've worked intensively to ensure that the withdrawal agreement, in particular the Northern Ireland Protocol, will be fully operational on the 1st of January 2021. Our aims and the proportionate and pragmatic way that we intended to pursue them were set out in the command paper that we published in May, the UK's approach to the Northern Ireland Protocol. This set out 3 key commitments that we believed needed to be respected in all scenarios. We had to ensure that Northern Ireland businesses retained unfettered access to the rest of the UK market. Northern Ireland's place in the UK's customs territory had to be protected, and that meant that goods that stayed in the UK were not subject to tariffs. And we had to ensure that the important Great Britain-Northern Ireland trade flows, on which lives and livelihoods depend, were not disrupted. We needed to ensure a smooth flow of trade with no need for new physical customs infrastructure. And Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that on Monday, the European Commission Vice President, Maroš Šefčovič, and I, as co-chairs of the Joint Committee set up to negotiate the implementation of the protocol, came to an agreement in principle on a deal which meets all of those commitments and puts the people of Northern Ireland first. So I'd like to begin by paying tribute to Maroš Šefčovič and his team for their pragmatism and their collaborative spirit and their determination to get a deal done that would work for both sides. And I'd also like to thank the First Minister, the Deputy First Minister and all the members of the Northern Ireland Executive for their crucial intervention at significant moments in order to ensure that the rights of the people of Northern Ireland were protected. Turning now to the first government commitment, this deal protects unfettered access for Northern Ireland businesses to their most important market. And as the Prime Minister underlined, this had to be protected in full. And that meant removing any prospect of export declarations for Northern Ireland goods moving from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. And that's what our agreement will do. There will be no additional requirements placed on Northern Ireland businesses for these movements, with a very limited and specific exception of trade in endangered species and conflict diamonds. On the second commitment, Mr. Speaker, the deal safeguards Northern Ireland's place in the UK's customs territory. As recently as July, the Commission had envisaged a default tariff scenario in which, and I quote, all goods brought into Northern Ireland would consider to be at risk and are, as such, subject to the common customs tariff. If that had been implemented, that would have raised the prospect of a 58% tariff on a pint of milk going from Scotland to a supermarket in Strabane, or 96% on a bag of sugar going from Liverpool to the shops of Belfast. As we've repeatedly made clear, this could never have been an acceptable outcome. So instead, I'm pleased to say that under the agreement that we've reached, Northern Ireland businesses selling to consumers or using goods in Northern Ireland will be free of all tariffs, whether that's Nissan cars from Sunderland or lamb from Montgomeryshire. Internal UK trade will be protected as we promised, whether we have a free trade agreement with the EU or not. And third, Mr. Speaker, this deal would keep goods flowing between Great Britain and Northern Ireland in January and indeed provide some necessary additional flexibilities. It protects Northern Ireland's supermarket supplies. We heard throughout the year that traders needed time to adapt their systems. That's why we've got a grace period for supermarkets to update their procedures. And our agreement also prevents any disruption at the end of the transition period on the movement of chilled meats. British sausages will continue to make their way to Belfast and Ballymena in the new year. And we've also got time for reciprocal agreements between the UK and the EU on agri-food, which can be discussed in the months ahead. This deal also protects the flow of medicines and vet medicines into Northern Ireland. This means that we'll grant industry a period of up to 12 months to adapt to new rules under the protocol. So this will avoid any disruption to critical medical supplies. So 3 commitments entered into, 3 commitments that we have upheld. But this agreement also goes further still, providing additional flexibility that will enable us to make the most of the opportunities that face us as the transition period ends. As you know, Mr. Speaker, this House has been concerned about the risk of so-called reach-back from the state aid provisions that the protocol applies. The concern that many colleagues had was that a company in Great Britain with only a peripheral link to commercial operations in Northern Ireland could be caught inadvertently by the tests within the protocol's text. That would not have been acceptable, nor was it what the protocol had envisaged. That's why I'm pleased that the agreement we have addresses that risk. It means that firms in Great Britain stay outside state aid rules where there is no genuine and direct link to Northern Ireland and no real foreseeable impact on Northern Ireland EU trade. It's an important step forward dealing with an issue raised by a number of honourable and right honourable members across this House. Also, this deal ensures that Northern Ireland will be out of the Common Agricultural Policy, which means that the Northern Ireland Executive have full freedom to set their own agricultural subsidies for Northern Ireland's farmers. It also means appropriate and flexible arrangements, which mean that more than £400 million of spending each year is totally exempt from state aid rules. As well as this, the deal ensures that support for fishermen in Northern Ireland will also be exempt from EU state aid rules, and that means more than £15 million of flexibility for Northern Ireland's fishermen over the next 5 years. And of course, Northern Ireland's services industries are totally outside the scope of the protocol and its state aid measures. The agreement also respects the protocol provisions which were endorsed by Parliament that allow some EU officials to be present at Northern Ireland ports as UK authorities carry out our own procedures. And let me be clear, there'll be no Belfast mini-embassy or mission, as some in the EU originally sought, and the EU officials will not have any powers to carry out checks themselves. There will instead be sensible, practical arrangements, cooperation, reciprocal data sharing, so that both sides can have confidence in these unique arrangements. And we also want to leave no doubt about our ongoing commitment to peace and prosperity in Northern Ireland. My right honourable friend, the Northern Ireland Secretary, will set out in the coming days further measures of financial support to help businesses and communities to prosper and thrive from the end of the year and beyond. And Mr. Speaker, we've been able to deliver a package which now means that the protocol can be implemented in a pragmatic and a proportionate way. It takes account of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement in all of its dimensions, and it protects the interests both of the EU single market, but more importantly, the territorial and constitutional integrity of the whole United Kingdom. Now, this agreement will be approved officially at a joint committee meeting in the coming days. And of course, this agreement that we've reached also enables the government to withdraw clauses 44, 45 and 47 of the UK Internal Market Bill and avoids the need for any additional provisions in the Taxation Bill. Having put beyond doubt the primacy of the sovereignty of this place as we leave the EU, we rest safe in the knowledge that such provisions are no longer required. We know that we now need to get on and give further clarity to business as to the specifics of what this deal means for them and how it will work in detail in practice. And we will do this through the publication of further guidance. And that will sit along the ongoing intensive work that we will take forward to implement the protocol. But above all, Mr. Speaker, we will always work with the interests of the people and businesses of Northern Ireland in mind, as this agreement and the important flexibilities it will provide reflects. Because we must all remember, if the protocol is to work, it must work for the whole community in Northern Ireland. And whether it is to be maintained in the future, as the protocol itself sets out, is for the people of Northern Ireland to decide through the democratic consent mechanism that my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, negotiated. And on that critical, important note of the primacy of democracy, I recommend this statement to the House.
We come to Shadow Secretary Rachel Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for advance sight of the statement from the Right Honourable Gentleman this afternoon. We welcome the statement and are pleased that decisions has been reached on the Northern Ireland Protocol. The Good Friday Agreement is a source of immense pride on this side of the House, given the role that Tony Blair's Labour government played in building on the work of Sir John Major in achieving it. Neither of those governments would play games with the peace process, and neither would a government led by my right honourable friend, the member for Holborn and St Pancras. Because game playing, with threats to break international law, has consequences, and it is also a dangerous distraction. The Agriculture Department in Northern Ireland say that the border infrastructure simply won't be ready in time, and Manufacturing NI say just 9% of businesses in Northern Ireland are ready for the end of the transition period. And the systems needed to make trade flow, such as the Trader Support Service, reportedly won't even be going live until December the 21st, 8 working days before the end of the transition period. Mr. Speaker, this really does give new meaning to the night before Christmas. Last December, the Prime Minister told this House, we're a UK government. Why would we put checks on goods NI to GB or GB to NI? It doesn't make sense. So with that in mind, could the Minister explain why today's documents confirm that for trade from GB to NI, there will indeed be a range of checks, and indeed the Trusted Traders Scheme will be removed after 3.5 years and reviewed then, with further uncertainty at that point. And indeed, the exemption of agri-food checks are only available for 3 months. So can the Minister tell us what guarantees there are with prices and availability of fresh food supplies in Northern Ireland after the 1st of April? And will custom checks be required just 3 months into 2021? And this all begs the question, Mr. Speaker, did the Prime Minister actually know what he had signed up to last year and then give false assurances to this House, or did he simply not care? This is a disgraceful way to treat businesses in good times, never mind in the middle of a pandemic. Turning to the trade deal needed for Northern Ireland and for Great Britain too, we are told that the level playing field remains an outstanding area of disagreement. Yet the Prime Minister's political declaration that he signed with the EU spoke of a future relationship with open and fair competition, encompassing robust commitments to ensure a level playing field. Now, I know that some Conservative MPs are agitated by the idea of a floor on workers' rights. Indeed, no less than 3 cabinet ministers jointly wrote a book that said that British workers are amongst the worst idlers in the world. Well, Mr. Speaker, we on this side of the House do not agree with that statement, and neither do the people of our country, who want to see more security at work, not less. And there are some siren voices on the government benches who appear to view any agreement with the European Union as a betrayal. Mr. Speaker, the Minister should know that the true betrayal would be job losses, border chaos and price rises in our shops. Now, the Minister referred to cars from Nissan and lamb exports from Wales, and that they will be tariff-free in Northern Ireland. But as he knows, they need to be tariff-free with the EU too. Now, we on this side of the House, we want the negotiations to succeed. We want the government to keep its promises and come back with the oven-ready deal that we were promised at the general election less than a year ago. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, sometimes it feels that we on this side of the House want the government to succeed and bring back this deal more than those on the government's own backbenches do. But deal or no deal, there are preparations that still need to be made for Northern Ireland and for Great Britain too. And Mr. Speaker, I want to ask again about customs agents, because just minutes ago, the Prime Minister didn't seem to have any answers on how many there are. But earlier in the year, the Right Honourable Gentleman agreed with industry estimates of 50,000 customs agents needed. Since then, he's told the BBC that the number had increased fourfold, but Mr. Speaker, he omitted to tell us what the actual figure was. So let's give the Right Honourable Gentleman another chance. How many customs agents are in place, and are we ready for the end of the transition period? And Mr. Speaker, it's not just me asking these questions. Richard Burnett, the Chief Executive of the Road Haulage Association, says the big issues that we face is that there are insufficient customs agents, and that without this and the correct paperwork, we are likely to see vehicles being turned around, and that's going to create significant chaos and significant queues. And turning to lorry parts, can the Minister tell us how many inland border facilities are ready, and will they ensure the free flow of lorries and vehicles from the 1st of January? And can the Minister guarantee this House that there will be no disruption to medical or food supplies from the 1st of January? Mr. Speaker, ours is a great country, and Labour wants to see a good life for all our people. But as great as our country is, it cannot afford to be afflicted by government incompetence. Every price rise, every traffic jam, every lost contract and every redundancy caused by this government's mistakes and poor planning holds our great country back. Next year must be a year of rebuilding and recovering from COVID-19, not dealing with the fallout of reckless decision-makings, tariffs or incompetence. So this is decision time for this government, and it is time to get the deal.
Gove. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady for the warm welcome that she gave to this agreement. I also thank her for the kind words that she offered Sir John Major. The process of concluding the Good Friday Agreement, as she quite rightly reminds us, was a signal achievement of Tony Blair's government, but was also achieved as a result of hard work across this House. And of course, there has been, since the Good Friday Agreement was concluded, 2 years of progress in Northern Ireland, and it's important that we seek to underpin and secure that. She asked about border infrastructure. Let me emphasise this border infrastructure is there to ensure that sanitary and phytosanitary checks can be made. As she knows, as the House knows, it's already the case that the Isle of Ireland is a single epidemiological zone, and therefore when live animals move from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, there are physical checks. There will be border facilities in order to ensure that these limited and proportionate SPS checks can be carried out at the port of Foyle, Warren Point, Belfast and Larne, and we've reassured the Commission and indeed others about the speed and effectiveness with which the necessary limited infrastructure will be in place. She also asked about the Trader Support Service, which is there to help Northern Ireland businesses. I'm pleased that we spend over £200 million in order to support Northern Ireland businesses, and I think it's the case that more than 10,000 businesses are now signed up to the Trader Support Service in order to ensure that they will incur no costs as a result of the protocol. She also asked about the future of the Trusted Trader Scheme, which, as she quite rightly points out, guarantees that goods being sold in Northern Ireland and businesses operating in Northern Ireland will face no tariffs. It is the case that we will have an opportunity to review how that scheme operates, but it is only the case that if there is a demonstrable diversion or illegal activity that it will need to be reviewed, and in those circumstances there is an obligation on both parties to seek alternative arrangements. And I should stress again, there are no additional customs checks which will be facing goods that go from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. She asked about customs agent capacity overall. It is the case that £84 million has been made available in order to increase capacity, and the latest survey by HMRC shows that there's been a four-fold increase in capacity. Of course, one of the reasons why we're phasing in import controls over 6 months next year is in order to ensure that the sector can increase even further, but that four-fold increase in capacity gives us confidence that we need that all the staff will be there. She mentioned Richard Burnett of the Road Haulage Association. Mr Burnett, along with Dave Wells of Logistics UK and other figures in the haulage and logistics industry, have played an invaluable role in making sure that government does everything necessary to prepare, but I've never shirked from saying that more needs to be done. She asked about the level playing field and workers' rights. We have a proud tradition of upholding workers' rights and ensuring that we have social and environmental protections in this country higher than in many other European countries. That will not change. That is a source of pride. But one thing we can't accept in the course of the level playing field negotiations is the demand from some in the EU that if the EU adopts new laws, that we would automatically have to follow those laws or face penalties. We're not afraid to say that our standards are high and we will uphold them. But we're also not afraid to say the people of this country voted to take back control, and that is what this government will do.
William Wright. Thank you, Mr Speaker. The implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol has become my right honourable friend's equivalent of the Schleswig-Holstein question, given the varieties of interpretations that surround it. But fundamentally, does what my right honourable friend agreed yesterday make it more or less likely that a free trade agreement with the European Union that crucially ensures the United Kingdom's sovereignty in its entirety can be secured?
I thank the Chairman of the Select Committee for his question. I think it was Palmerston who said that there were only 3 people who knew the answer to the Schleswig-Holstein question. One was dead, the other one was mad, and he himself had forgotten what the answer was. But on the Northern Ireland Protocol, there are all sorts of honourable and right honourable members in this House who have played a part in making sure that we can indeed secure Northern Ireland's constitutional future within the UK and ensure that we leave the European Union as one country whole and entire.
Let's head up to Scotland with Pete Wishart. Pete Wishart.
And thank you once again, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the Chancellor for his statement. It's one of these statements which I suppose is good news until you actually see the scale of the Brexit horrors that are now just in front of us. We're now at the stage with a chaotic Brexit that we have a sort of Schrodinger's deal, one that's sort of there but also not. I don't know if he's actually come here today looking for some sort of congratulations and well done for all this. I suppose it's a well done for taking us all to the very brink with the very worst of negotiation statecraft and what was supposed to be the easiest deal in the world. A well done for the emerging chaos at our ports and businesses taking flight. Or maybe even a well done for in a few weeks denying our young people the right to live, work and love freely across a continent. And tonight, we're going to have the Last Supper, but we know it will be the British people who will be crucified. And yes, what Northern Ireland's got is great for them. Best of both worlds is a phrase that we in Scotland are pretty much familiar with. It's what we were promised in 2014. Now in 2020, we are faced with the worst of all worlds. So we would give a right arm for access to the EU single market and unfettered access across the rest of the UK market. So can he explain to the Scottish people exactly why Scotland is the only part of the United Kingdom that will not get any part of what they voted for in Brexit?
Secretary Gove.
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman once again for his questions. They're masterpieces of metaphorical concatenation. He managed to bring in both Schrödinger's cat and the Easter and Passiontide narrative before he eventually got to his question. And I think it was a masterpiece, as I say, of lyrical concision, which we would expect from Runrig's principal star. But on the basic question, it is the case he recognises, as I recognise, that Northern Ireland has a unique position within the United Kingdom as a result of having a land border with the European Union, which no other part of the United Kingdom does, and that requires specific arrangements. But whatever those specific arrangements, it is the case that Northern Ireland, by the will of its people, remains part of the United Kingdom. Long may it remain so.
Sir William Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much agree with what the Prime Minister said today at Prime Minister's questions. Does the Chancellor also agree, and is there anything in his own statement which would be allowed to undermine the unfettered sovereignty of the United Kingdom as asserted by successive democratic votes in the referendum, successive acts of Parliament, Section 30 and Section 38 of the 2020 Act? And would he also confirm today to appear before the European Scrutiny Committee, which, as he knows, he has declined to do so on at least 3 occasions, most recently on the 26th of November, which we put to him in writing, but so far he hasn't been able to come. Will he please commit now, today, to coming to before the committee as soon as possible, right now?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On the first part, my right honourable friend is absolutely right. Section 38 of the Act which gave effect to the withdrawal agreement upheld the sovereignty of this place, and there is nothing in what we have concluded that in any way diverges from that. On the second question, I'm very sorry that I've played hard to get, but I'll make sure that we can have a date before Christmas when the two of us can meet in suitably COVID-compliant surroundings.
The Select Committee, Hilary Benn.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Right Honourable Gentleman's statement because it shows what can be achieved with political commitment, and I do hope we will see more of that later on today. However, he seems to have brought back not a permanent arrangement, but a series of grace periods, and I want to ask him about that. For example, it's been reported that food products coming from GB into Northern Ireland will be exempt from export health certificates for a period of at least 3 months, and chilled meat, sausages he referred to, will be allowed for a period of time pending a review, after which they might be prevented anymore from moving from GB to Northern Ireland. So what is going to happen after those dates, and how exactly a business is going to be able to prepare when they haven't yet seen the detailed arrangements, because the Joint Committee isn't going to meet for a couple of days, and when those details may well change in a few months' time yet again?
Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Right Honourable Gentleman for his questions, and indeed the work of his committee, which has helped us as we've sought to resolve these issues. And his welcome is very, very welcome. On the detailed points that he makes, we've been talking to traders, supermarkets in particular, in order to make sure that they're ready for any export health certificate requirements. And we know that some supermarkets are already ready. 1 or 2 others need time in order to get ready. They requested a grace period. Originally, those in the Commission argued that that would be impossible, or if it did exist, it could only be a matter of weeks. We managed to secure 3 months, which is sufficient time, we understand, in order to ensure that supermarkets are ready. On the chilled meat provision, it is the case that we have secured a 6-month period during which there will be absolutely no change. Again, it was the case that there were some in the EU who argued that that should be a strictly non-renewable provision. We secured an approach which meant that we could keep under review how things were operating in order to ensure that we provided people in Northern Ireland with access to the food that they currently enjoy without any disruption to the integrated supply chains that supermarkets have and which they will adjust.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of the life science and other businesses of South Cambridgeshire export to Northern Ireland. Can my right honourable friend reassure them that they won't face any new bureaucratic obstacles or tariffs as they sell their goods and services there?
Well, my honourable friend is a brilliant advocate for the life science sector, and I know that it provides jobs and investment in Cambridgeshire and beyond. It's also the case that there is a thriving life science and pharmaceutical sector in Northern Ireland, and it will be the case that there are no impediments to the continued successful integration of that work.
Christine Jarvis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Gentleman and I have known each other for many years, and while we might have differed on Brexit, there is another issue in Scotland in which we are very much in agreement. Can the Right Honourable Gentleman assure us today that every effort will be made to ensure that this agreement, good as it is for Northern Ireland, is not used to undermine Scotland's position within the Union, and that my constituents in Edinburgh West and elsewhere might benefit from the same sort of phasing in agreement as has been agreed for Northern Ireland?
Well, I've known the Honourable Lady, she says, for a few years, and she's a brilliant MP, and she's absolutely right. I don't think, the Honourable Lady opposite said that people shouldn't play politics with the Good Friday Agreement. I don't think they should. And I think it's important to recognise that Northern Ireland is in a unique position within the UK. I think the majority of people in Scotland and across the UK recognise that. But it's also important, she's absolutely right, that in our arrangements with the EU we take specific account of the needs that Scotland has, and on everything from the provision of seasonal agricultural workers to making sure that we can expedite fish and shellfish from the northeast to the EU, to indeed the principal position that my right honourable friend, the President of the Board of Trade, is taking on whisky exports. It's absolutely important we recognise that Scotland has distinct needs, and that working with the Scottish Government and Scottish MPs like herself, we can advance Scotland's interests.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree that the EU's request for a mini embassy in Northern Ireland was inflammatory for communities in Northern Ireland and is not required to allow the EU to supervise processes carried out by UK authorities?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. There were some in the EU who wanted to sort of mount a sort of land grab, as it were, and to have a part of Northern Ireland that was forever Brussels. But it is the case that what we have agreed is a pragmatic approach, which means that the EU, quite rightly, can have people in Northern Ireland so that it can be assured that the UK officials who are carrying out our own sovereign procedures are doing so in a way in which everyone can have confidence. And I want again to place on record my thanks to the Vice President Maros Šefčovič for making sure that it was pragmatic arrangements rather than symbolism that won through.
Sir Geoffrey Dawes.
I know that the Right Honourable Gentleman is as passionate as I am about the Union. And Article 6 of the Act of Union states very clearly there should be no barrier to trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland as is now. And Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol also makes clear, Mr. Speaker, that if this protocol leads to serious economic, societal or environmental difficulties that are liable to persist, the United Kingdom government may unilaterally take appropriate safeguard measures. Safeguarding the Union is not a 3-month, 6-month or 3-year project, Mr. Speaker. It is an enduring commitment. Will the Chancellor now give a commitment that, if necessary, the Government will introduce safeguard measures to ensure unfettered access in both directions for trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
Mr. Gove.
Well, the Right Honourable Gentleman makes a very important point in drawing attention to a very important provision within the Northern Ireland Protocol. And of course, the Government came under some criticism from some for having provisions in the UK Internal Market Bill which upheld the sovereignty of this place in order to uphold the constitutional and territorial integrity of the United Kingdom. We no longer need to use those provisions because of the agreement that we've reached. But he's absolutely right. Of course, that provision remains. But I hope it will be the case that through patient and pragmatic discussion that we can resolve any future issues in the way that we've resolved existing issues.
Dr. Liam Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do congratulate my right honourable friend on reaching his agreement in principle, which shows that Britain is willing to make constructive compromises. Can he tell us, as it now stands, is there any part of the withdrawal agreement that requires direct application of EU law to any part of the United Kingdom?
Yes, it is the case that as a result of some of the provisions within the Northern Ireland Protocol, that it will be the case that there will be a requirement on some businesses and in Northern Ireland specifically to follow the acquis, and that is one of the ways in which we can ensure that there is no need for border infrastructure between Ireland and Northern Ireland.
Let's head to Wales with Howell Williams. Howell Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We welcome yesterday's agreement. We want for Northern Ireland just what we want for Wales, unfettered access to our most important markets with the rest of the UK and, of course, with the EU. But the fundamentals of trade, particularly between Wales and Northern Ireland, and indeed the Republic of Ireland, remain uncertain. Hauliers fear serious disruption on the Holyhead-Dublin route, with the Welsh Government's plans revealed on Monday for contraflows and parking lots being too little too late. What steps has he taken to lessen this potential disruption?
Minister Gove.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for his question. I know that because of the geographical proximity of his constituency to Ynysmon, to the island of Anglesey, he has a particular concern. But it is the case that we've been working well with the Welsh Government, and I want to thank in particular their Counsel General Jeremy Miles in order to make sure that we will have infrastructure in Holyhead, which can ensure that the second busiest roll-on, roll-off port in the United Kingdom continues to prosper.
Sir Bernard Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just point out to my right honourable friend that whatever he agreed in the joint committee yesterday remains subject to the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice under the disputes procedure. And moreover, whatever he agreed yesterday was only agreed because we had the clauses of the UKIM bill which were threatening to block the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. Will he agree with me that it's very important that we maintain the position that this House can at any time put blocks in front of the European Court of Justice while this withdrawal agreement remains in force?
Well, my right honourable friend is right. This House is sovereign, and it's as a result of, obviously, of bringing forward the UK Internal Market Bill. I understand some of the unease and controversy that it generated, but he's absolutely right that following on from that, we were able to make progress, and we are now no longer in a position where we need to bring forward those clauses. But of course, it's the sovereign right of this Parliament to legislate as it thinks fit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister. We welcome details that businesses have sought anxiously all year, and of course we keenly anticipate a wider trade deal that might finally allow us to enjoy the conditions that we currently enjoy. Can I ask how he proposes to ensure continuity of supply for squeezed Northern Ireland households to have choice and affordability after mitigations on export health certificates expire in 6 months?
Minister Gove.
Well, it is the case that we've been working with supermarkets and with other traders in order to ensure that their supply lines and the current provision and indeed in the future, I hope, enhanced provision of all the goods that consumers in Northern Ireland currently enjoy can remain. And it is the case that the Trader Support Service is there alongside other support that we're giving to businesses in Northern Ireland, indeed businesses across the UK, to make sure that a fully integrated part of the UK internal market enjoys the same access to the same goods as the rest of us.
Malcolm Longley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can my right honourable friend assure me and all of my Dudley North constituents that should we strike a trade agreement with the EU, that we will not compromise in any way on our fishing waters, our borders and our laws, and, may I add, most importantly, that any governance arrangements that may flow from any trade agreement are completely consistent with those of a fully sovereign country.
Minister Gove.
My honourable friend is bang on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish we were in a different place where we didn't need the protocol to be in place. But I do want to recognise the progress that has been made through this provisional agreement.
But could I ask the Chancellor to recognise that there is a range of unfinished business in relation to protecting the Northern Ireland economy, including issues such as transit from Great Britain via the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland, access to EU free trade agreements, particularly for our agri-food and dairy sector, issues around data adequacy, and also the protection of the service sector on an all-island basis?
Mr. Gove. Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman's points, and he is right. There is important work that is still to be done. As I think he noted, it is the case that the services sector in Northern Ireland is totally exempt from any state aid provisions, but it is also the case that Northern Ireland has benefited from commercial links with the Irish Republic, as well as its strong position within the UK internal market, and there is more work that does require to be done in order to strengthen Northern Ireland's formidable competitive position.
Mark Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good people of my Workington constituency stand squarely behind my right honourable friend and Lord Frost in the negotiations. Can he confirm that with this agreement on the protocol in place, the UK will leave the transition period at the end of this month, regardless of whether we reach an agreement with the EU or not?
Mr. Gove.
Yep, my honourable friend is absolutely right. Whatever happens, and we do hope that we get a free trade agreement, we will leave the customs union and the single market on December the 31st.
Let's head to Barry Sherman. Barry Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State will be aware, I hope he's aware, that many of us will be feel very sad if his career will end in failure if we don't get an agreement with the European Union today or very soon. But could I also say to him that as a member of the Committee on the Future Relationship with Europe, I've recently, with my colleagues, listened to leaders of the Northern Ireland business community, manufacturing and farming community. They don't happen to think everything is fully operational. They don't think anything is oven ready. And if it were in the oven, it would be pretty thin pickings. Could he please, at this late stage, make every effort to make sure that we get a deal rather than leaving without a deal?
Minister.
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for his words. We will do everything possible that we can to get a deal, but it can't be a deal at any price. As for his point about my career ending in failure, my career, I'm afraid, has been marked by failure consistently in so many ways. And often in politics I'm reminded of the words of Winston Churchill, that success means going from failure to failure with undiminished enthusiasm, and that's what I hope to do.
Maroon cakes.
Can I thank my right honourable friend for his statement and careers advice? Of course, I warmly welcome the news of this significant progress, but can my right honourable friend reassure the House that whilst the Government has said that it will withdraw clauses 44, 45 and 47 of the UK Internal Market Bill, the rest of the bill will remain in place so that we can ensure that goods can move seamlessly across the UK, benefiting businesses and consumers across all four nations?
My
honourable friend is absolutely right. The UK Internal Market Bill is an absolutely critical piece of legislation which safeguards the rights of producers and consumers across the UK. The clauses she mentioned excited controversy. I think that they were necessary, but in any case, that controversy can now pass because they're being withdrawn, and I therefore hope that the bill will pass as well.
John Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government's Get Ready for Brexit campaign looks lovely, but it doesn't answer the question, get ready for what? Deal, no deal, what deal? And businesses have a pandemic to deal with. So will he agree, does he admit, that the combination of Brexit shambles with the absence of proper support for small businesses facing COVID-19 measures and the total exclusion of so many businesses altogether from support means that this government is totally letting down small businesses in the North East and across the country?
It probably won't surprise the honourable lady to say I don't agree with that. I think it is the case that when it comes to Brexit transition, we know that because we're leaving the single market and the customs union, whether or not we secure a free trade agreement, much of what most businesses need to do is broadly the same. And of course, a government stands ready to help businesses to adjust. But the honourable lady knows that having lived and worked in Newcastle in the past, the fate and the future of businesses in the North East is very dear to me. It's striking how many businesses in the North East, those who work for them, voted Conservative just 12 months ago, which is why Conservative MPs in Blythe Valley, in Bishop Auckland, in Redcar, and of course across the North East are standing up I'll mention more constituencies if she likes as well. More constituencies the Conservatives won. North West Durham, Consett, of course, now a Conservative constituency. Sedgefield with Spennymoor, now a Conservative constituency. Anyway, as the Honourable Lady and indeed the House knows, the North East is Tory, and that's because we stand up for workers.
Richard Drax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I remind the members of the opposite benches that we all want a deal. There's no one on this side that does not want a deal, but it must be a fair deal and one that respects the UK's integrity. On that point, my right honourable friend has said to us on many occasions that we must leave together. In answering questions to my two right honourable friends from North Somerset and Harwich, he said, unless I'm incorrect, that EU law will apply in Northern Ireland, as will the European Court of Justice. Now, we've gone to all this effort to be free of these structures. Can you confirm that I've got it wrong, or he's got it wrong, one or the other?
Minister? Well, my honourable friend never gets it wrong, and he is right. It's there in the withdrawal agreement and in the protocol that we accept the acquis in a specific number of areas in Northern Ireland, and that is part of the withdrawal agreement which was signed before the general election, which was in the Conservative manifesto, and which many, though not all, members of this House supported. Now, of course, there were some concerns, understandable concerns, that the way in which the protocol would apply would mean that we would face tariffs and other restrictions. The agreement that we've concluded means that won't be the case, and the UK will leave, and Northern Ireland will be capable of benefiting from trade deals that we do as a result of Brexit, and also will be outside the Common Agricultural Policy, and also it will benefit from the Australian-style points-based immigration system which applies across the UK.
Owen Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Minister is telling Northern Ireland they can have the best of both worlds, he's using the same reasoning to tell Scotland to shut up and get back in your box, all while claiming any negative impacts are not actually Brexit related. Is it now the case that the Minister's become the government's very own Bart Simpson, causing chaos and presenting their agenda regardless of costs while claiming, I didn't do it, nobody saw me do it, you can't prove anything?
Minister.
Well, I always thought that the Simpsons character I most remembered was Groundkeeper Willie, actually, because, as you know, he's an Aberdonian. Well, I'm not sure what his position is on independence, but he's certainly, as Jannies go, he's one of the best. But anyway, to the honourable gentleman's particular point, it is the case that Scotland does have the best of both worlds. It has a devolved administration in Holyrood and representation by great MPs like himself here in Westminster.
We go to John Barron.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I commend my right honourable friend for his role and very much welcome this agreement. It is good news that the EU has compromised. Otherwise, its previous position on everything from unlimited checks and export declarations could have choked trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. However, given this agreement will add an impetus, if you like, to the wider trade talks, will he commend the Prime Minister for not making last-minute compromises just to get a trade deal over the line? Because he has the support of the Conservative Party should he decide to walk away and trade on Australia and Canada terms. After all, a trade deal is for keeps, not just for Christmas.
My right honourable friend is absolutely right, and the points he made, like the points that Sir Edward Lee made earlier, reinforce the fact that the Conservative Party is united behind the Prime Minister, willing him to get a deal, but also ready to accept that if we cannot get the deal that we want, that we will not accept a deal at any price. That has to be the right way forward.
Tim Farron.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 95% of Cumbrian farm exports are to the single market, so our farmers need unfettered access to that market too. His friend, the DEFRA Secretary, at the weekend said that British farmers would find tariffs with the EU, I quote, unmanageable. Now, if you add that to the fact that deal or no deal, in 3 weeks' time, British farmers, English farmers, will see huge uncompensated cuts in their incomes begin, we risk the loss of hundreds of family farms in the lakes and the dales and elsewhere. Does he agree with me that a country that cannot feed itself has no sovereignty?
Minister.
Well, the right honourable gentleman makes several very important points. The first is that we absolutely do need to support upland farmers, not just in his own beautiful constituency and in Cumbria, but across the United Kingdom. And it is the case that sustainable livestock farming is the only way in which we can make sure that we have agriculture in the future in upland and grassland areas such as the one that he represents. The second thing is, yes, there is a prospect of tariffs if we don't secure a free trade agreement, which is why we do need to have support systems in place for those. Third point I would make is that the new system of support that we're giving to farmers combines not just support for small farmers, but also support for the climate change and environmental goals that we both share, and I think it's important that we do reform the Common Agricultural Policy in that way. But I look forward to continuing to work with him because I know that his commitment to rural England and to our farmers is resolute.
Now we go to Flick Drummond.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the principle that exit summary declarations for goods from Northern Ireland to the rest of the UK will not be required? But does my right honourable friend agree that while it's reasonable for EU authorities to supervise the application of the protocol in Northern Ireland, can he assure me that all processes in UK sovereign territory will be carried out by UK authorities?
Minister.
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and it is UK authorities carrying out our procedures in our territory under our laws.
Lloyd Russell-Moyle.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This was the never-ending story, and it seems a bit like it's just turning into a never-ending nightmare for businesses who have been told not of a settled situation, but have been told that the can is going to be kicked down the road for 3 to 6 months. Is it not time to be honest with the British people and say this will never end, negotiations will continue forever because this government is just not capable in securing decent deals that are settled wills with the European Union?
Minister.
Well, I think, I mean, I absolutely take the point that the honourable gentleman is making. But I think it is the case that we will be negotiating in the future new free trade deals, as it happens, with other countries outside the European Union, which we couldn't have negotiated inside the European Union. These negotiations are led by my brilliant colleague, the President of the Board of Trade. She secured deals, for example, with Japan, even better than that which we had in the EU. So negotiating going on is what trade secretaries do, and we're lucky to have the best in the world.
Mark Pawsey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome my honourable friend's statement in which he spoke of the importance of providing clarity for business. Can he confirm that clarity will include ensuring that manufacturers from across the UK will continue to be able to trade freely with a market of 500 million consumers who are on our doorstep?
Well, my honourable friend makes an important point, and he's been a consistently strong and coherent voice for manufacturing, not just in his own native West Midlands, but across the United Kingdom. And one of the things that we do want to secure is a free trade agreement, which ensures that our manufacturing and advanced manufacturing sector can continue to sell into a market on our doorstep.
Emmanuel Buck is not here. Robin Miller.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I too welcome this package and what it means for business, for peace and for our union. And dare I say that news of tariff-free lamb comes close to being glad tidings for the shepherds on the hillsides above Aberconway this Christmas time. But lest we get lost in that kind of detail, can my right honourable friend just confirm that there's nothing in this agreement which compromises the integrity of either our sovereignty or the union?
Minister.
No, my honourable friend is absolutely right. This House remains sovereign, and it is also the case that the territorial and the political integrity of the United Kingdom remains robust.
Sammy Wilson.
This party opposed the protocol and warned about all of the problems which the Minister is now having to address. And whilst we welcome the changes which we made today, nevertheless, the real test will be in how these measures work on the ground rather than the spin we get in this House. And I just want to ask the Minister, first of all, as far as EU officials are concerned, is it not a fact that whilst they will not carry out the searches and the investigations, they will be able to direct UK officials on the ground, and under Article 5 of the protocol, UK officials will have to carry out their demands. And the Irish government is now spinning that the 6-month period is simply to allow supermarkets in Northern Ireland to source their products from the Irish Republic. Does he believe that we have gained back sovereignty if we're allowing EU officials to direct our officials and other governments to tell us where we can get our food from?
Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Right Honourable Gentleman because, as he quite rightly points out, there were a number of very principled opponents of the whole idea of the protocol itself, and he and his colleagues in his party laid out some of their concerns in a very cogent fashion. In the end, this House of Commons decided that the protocol as part of the withdrawal agreement was the right way to proceed, but as he quite rightly pointed out, it was important that a number of difficult questions were addressed. And he's also absolutely right that the proof will be in the implementation on the ground. On the two specific areas that he mentions, it is the case that the limited number, I think it's probably no more than 24 at most, of EU officials who will come into Northern Ireland will be working alongside UK officials, and it will be the UK officials who will be in the lead there, but we want to provide the EU with assurance. On the matter of where goods are sourced from, I can't think of any better place for goods in Northern Ireland supermarkets to be sourced from than Northern Ireland itself. And I don't think it's the case, wonderful though produce in the Republic of Ireland is, that there is any better producer. The gentleman over there asks about bananas. I think he was referring, of course, to SNP policy on trade. But when it comes to pork products, there's nothing better than an Ulster fry.
Adam O'Free.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank you for your kindness towards, and the Right Honourable Member for, his kindness towards my many children who've been here on many occasions. And my 9-year-old Atticus said to me when he just got sight of the question I was going to ask today, "But Dad, the answer to that question is so obvious." So I'm going to ask it anyway, which is, despite our desire for a goods trade deal with the European Union, does my Right Honourable friend agree that we must never again cede control of our borders or coastal waters to a foreign power?
Minister.
Well, I knew that my honourable friend was a great dad because his son absolutely hits the nail on the head in saying that the answer to that question is obvious. No, we absolutely should not cede that control. Very good question. Answer's clear. Excellent son. Brilliant dad.
Now we go to Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The vehicle industry has consistently warned that a no-deal Brexit risks the future of UK plants and skilled unionised jobs. Without a deal, Luton-made Vauxhall vans could face a tariff of 22%. Coupled with COVID cuts to our council and no support for our aviation industry, for Luton, no deal would make this a job-killing government. With just 22 days to go before the end of the transition period, can he guarantee there will be no tariffs on vans and cars made in this country?
Minister.
Well, the automobile sector is important, not just in Luton, where there are so many skilled people producing fantastic products, but across the UK. And of course, if we secure a free trade agreement, it will be a zero tariff, zero quota agreement. If we don't secure that agreement, then it will be the case that there will be tariffs, but there will also be tariffs on automobiles coming into the UK, and that will have an impact, obviously, on industry in the EU.
We are only halfway through the call list, and it would be best if I can manage to get everybody who wants to ask a question on this very important subject in to ask such a question. I see that I have some agreement from my right honourable friend who's quite far down the list. Therefore, I must insist on having questions. Just questions, short questions, not great big statements. We all know what's already happened. Let's just have the questions for the Minister so that we can then just have answers from the Minister. Julian Smith.
I welcome this agreement and thank him and his civil service team for getting us to this stage. But could I urge him to spend some time with the PUL community who retain concerns about the detail? I suggest Michaela's Kitchen on the Shankhill Road is the best place to do that engagement. But also, could he spend some time now with the nationalist community, unaligned voters, and those passionate supporters of the European Union in Northern Ireland to demonstrate to them that the practical approach he and the EU have taken on this protocol can now be replicated on issues like climate change, health, jobs and the future of all people across the island of Ireland?
Minister.
My right honourable friend is absolutely right. There is more work to do, and I always enjoy any opportunity to be in Northern Ireland with my right honourable friend, the Northern Ireland Secretary of State. He was an outstanding Secretary of State in Northern Ireland, and he makes a series of very important points that I take completely to heart.
Matt Western.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Honda, of course, have just announced they've had to pause their production due to problems in getting components through ports. Does the Secretary of State suggest that the failings of Honda to get these parts is down entirely to them, or does the government share some of the blame?
No, I don't think it's Honda's case. I think it is the case that there is a global problem with container traffic, and that point's been well made by those who are leading our major ports.
James Sunderland.
Madam Deputy Speaker, could I please ask my right honourable friend whether the recent removal of clauses from the Internal Market Bill serves as an indicator or a sweetener to the European Union that early white smoke might be forthcoming on a wider trade deal?
Minister.
We made that decision as a government because we believed that we'd satisfied all of our aims in the discussions on the protocol. It was a sovereign decision, but I hope that it will help to ensure that we do get an FTA.
Joanna Cherry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the withdrawal of clauses 44, 45 and 47 of the Internal Market Bill. But can the Chancellor tell me, has he any plans to carry out an assessment of the impact of the threats to breach a recently signed treaty on the United Kingdom's international standing and the UK's ability to enter into future agreements, given that it's now known across the world that the United Kingdom is prepared to break its word in order to get its way?
Minister.
I think the Right Honourable and Learned Lady will know that since we introduced those clauses in the UK Internal Market Bill, we succeeded in signing any number of trade agreements with other countries, and I think that's because the reputation of the UK continues to stand high.
Now we go to Harlow, to Rob Halfon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend has played a blinder, but could I ask him, given that the EU withdrawal means that British government procurement will no longer be subject to OJ-EU rules, what concrete steps will my right honourable friend take to ensure that Northern Ireland companies and businesses across Great Britain that wish to procure contracts with government can only do so if they employ a significant number of apprentices?
Minister.
Very important point by Chairman of the Select Committee. My honourable friend Lord Agnew will be bringing forward a paper on procurement reform shortly, which will show exactly how we can achieve the ambition that he has so consistently and brilliantly put forward for apprenticeships.
Kerry McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Following on from the question that my honourable friend for Warwick Leamington asked about the situation with Honda, given the chaos at ports is already occurring before the end of the transition period, and I understand this is because people are stockpiling because they're so worried about what will happen next year, can he confidently say that the perfect storm of Christmas, Brexit stockpiling, COVID restrictions and the new customs regime will not lead to significant disruption come January?
Minister.
No, it is a very fair point. There are a number of things which are coming together this Christmas, and it's helpful that she contextualises the fact that the situation that we have with containers is as a result of many factors. We're doing everything we can in order to ensure that trade continues to flow freely, but as she quite rightly points out, there are a number of factors with which all governments are having to grapple.
Joe Gideon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With clauses 44, 45 and 47 of the UK Internal Market Bill now withdrawn, can my right honourable friend reassure the House that seamless trade between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK will continue, despite any suggestion from the European Union to interpret the withdrawal agreement in such a way as to prevent our internal market, which has functioned for centuries?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. I should stress that there were some in the EU who did have precisely that agenda, but Vice President Maroš Šefčovič has done a great job in making sure that this is an arrangement that works for everyone. So it will continue to be the case that the superb ceramic products that are made in her constituency will continue to flow onto tables in Belfast, Ballymena, Strabane and Derry, Londonderry.
Bill Esterson.
Does the Minister regret the fact that the government abolished the expert trade advisory groups which were set up to advise the government on customs and continuity in trade, They were disbanded in July because the members, or some of the members, refused to sign non-disclosure agreements. Wouldn't it have made more sense to keep the trade advisory groups going to help avoid the disruption we've been hearing about at the ports and the delays in essential food and manufacturing parts which are being widely reported today?
Minister.
Well, that's all news to me, but maybe he has a point, I don't know.
Now we go to Dame Cheryl Gillan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I commend my right honourable friend and also the Vice President for reaching an amicable and sensible agreement? And can I wish the Prime Minister well and hope that neither of the two diners tonight get indigestion and also achieve an acceptable deal, both for the EU, but in particular our own country. At the end of last month, Jim Hara told the Public Accounts Committee that Customs is concentrating on 7 key IT systems that need to be changed or built from new to enable GB EU trade to continue and to enable us to comply particularly with the Northern Ireland Protocol. Could my right honourable friend update me on those systems? Will they be completed before the end of the transition period?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. There are a number of systems, both the Trader Support Service, TSS, the Movement Assistance Scheme, MAS, the Goods Vehicle Management Scheme, GVMS, and CDS, which is the new replacement for Chief in HMRC. That's quite a lot of acronyms. A lot of work has gone into making sure that we will be ready. Some of it is close to the wire, but I'm confident that everything will be in place.
Jonathan Edwards.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Madam Deputy Speaker. From the 1st of January onwards, if he was a business owner primarily exporting to the EU, would he prefer to be located in Northern Ireland or Wales?
Minister.
Well, that is the most difficult question I've ever faced in this House. Because I love Northern Ireland and I love Wales as well. And there are all sorts of advantages of being located in either jurisdiction. I suspect my choice would be made even more difficult if I had to choose between, say, Carmarthenshire or North Armagh. Forgive me, Northampton. Two uniquely beautiful parts of the United Kingdom. Do you know what? It's Sophie's choice in business terms. So wherever you're located in the United Kingdom, you benefit from having a strong government determined to ensure that this country can take advantage of global opportunities.
David Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can my right honourable friend say if the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice will continue to prevail in relation to the Northern Ireland Protocol? And if that is the case, explain how that state of affairs is compatible with the restoration of United Kingdom sovereignty.
Minister.
It is the case that in the withdrawal agreement that we concluded before the last election, and which this House voted on, not every member, of course, supported it, but a majority did. We made it clear that within the Northern Ireland Protocol there would be a limited portion of the acquis relating to goods in the single market that would apply in Northern Ireland. It was the aim of this House and the aim of this government to ensure that we could reach a satisfactory arrangement on the protocol in line with the principles that we laid out in the command paper. That's what we have done, and that upholds the territorial integrity of the United Kingdom and the ability of every citizen of the UK to benefit from all of the opportunities that Brexit provides.
Jeff Smith.
Thank you. Would the Minister comment on the UK Government's commitment to the Peace Plus programme in the period ahead, which, as he will know, has played such an important role in underpinning peace and reconciliation in Northern Ireland?
Minister.
We're totally committed, and the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland will be saying more about that in coming days.
Simon Fell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can my right honourable friend reassure me that in tonight's negotiations and the ongoing negotiations with the EU, the Prime Minister and his team will remember just how important securing a deal will be to Cumbrian farmers and indeed farmers across all 4 nations?
Minister.
Absolutely. For Cumbrian farmers and also for manufacturers in Barrow, we will be doing everything we can to get the best possible set of arrangements.
Dr. Andrew Murison.
The temporary food waiver for trusted traders is very much to be welcomed, and my right honourable friend is to be congratulated for securing it. But can I draw him a little bit on the detail for what will then follow, because businesses need certainty, and what he has had to say will of course be very welcome to the big supermarkets, but smaller operators, small shops and street traders on who the Great Ulster Fry depends so much will still be left in a level of uncertainty, particularly if they're not signed up to Trusted Trader. Can he say to what extent the Trusted Trader scheme will extend to small operators of that sort?
Well, my right honourable friend, who was an outstanding Northern Ireland minister, is absolutely right, and we'll be going into more detail once the Joint Committee concludes on exactly how we can safeguard the interests of small and medium-sized enterprises as well, and it will be the case that we'll be notifying the Commission of those businesses that do need to take advantage of the grace period that we've got.
Alison Thewlis.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. RTE reports on the derogation for sausages and chilled meats and unfrozen prepared meals, and notes that once a derogation period is elapsed, Northern supermarkets will have to source such products locally or from the south. Can you explain why it's acceptable to him to disadvantage Scotland in such a way and our food exporters? And isn't it just another example of why Scotland would be better off as an independent nation state within the EU?
Hear, hear.
Well, if Scotland were an independent nation-state, then it would face trade barriers at Berwick, at Cairnryan. It would be the case that by leaving the European Union, Scotland would be. I'm just pointing out the inevitable consequences of the course which the Honourable Lady has set her heart on, which is making sure that if Scotland did become independent, it would face tariff and regulatory barriers to access its biggest market, which is the rest of the UK. She asks why. That is the inevitable consequence of independence, alongside the abandonment of the pound sterling, a re-entry into the common fisheries policy. It's a terrible course to go on, and because I admire the Honourable Lady so much, I hope that she will recognise that the future of her Glasgow constituents is better secured in the United Kingdom than going down the perilous path to separation that the SNP have argued for like a pied piper for many decades.
Steve Double.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the pragmatic approach that has been taken in reaching this agreement that respects the sovereignty and independence of the UK as we leave the EU, whilst also recognising the need for the EU to protect their single market? Does my right honourable friend agree with me that it's this same pragmatism that now needs to be applied to a trade deal whilst respecting those same principles? And would he join me in wishing the Prime Minister well at his dinner tonight?
I absolutely do, and I also hope that on the EU side we see something of the same pragmatism that we've seen in this particular area.
Stephen Timms.
Deputy Speaker, if there's no data adequacy agreement by the end of this month, what's his current estimate of the legal and admin costs to business for putting in place the new contractual clauses they'll have to introduce in order to continue to exchange data with their European partners?
It's a very important question. I don't have an exact estimate of what the standard contractual clauses costs would be, but it is the case that because we're compliant with GDPR at the moment, I see no reason why data adequacy should not be granted.
Now we go to Sir David Evanet.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome my right honourable friend's statement today and congratulate him on his hard work in achieving this agreement. Can he confirm that this is a pragmatic and sensible approach to protect Northern Ireland's place in the UK's customs territory?
Absolutely. My honourable friend has been a consistent champion for business and enterprise in all his years in this House, and he's absolutely right. This pragmatic approach works for businesses in his constituency and in Northern Ireland.
Bradshaw.
Will he correct his claim on the Today programme this morning that we will continue to benefit from free healthcare if we visit the rest of Europe after January the 1st in the event of no deal, and that our students will continue to benefit from Erasmus programmes in the event of no deal?
Well, it is the case that students who are currently engaged on Erasmus programmes will continue to be part of them until the end of that academic course. And it is also the case that UK citizens who've been living in EU countries are covered by the withdrawal agreement rights, which we all voted on. I think he actually voted against, but nevertheless, we protected their rights.
Order! 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 Sir Desmond Swain.
I'm grateful to him for suggesting the lucrative opportunity of exporting conflict diamonds, but just how burdensome will the additional paperwork be of which he spoke?
Given that there is very, very little trade that I'm aware of in conflict diamonds from Northern Ireland to Great Britain, and if anything, even smaller trade in, for example, endangered species products like tiger skins, I suspect that the bureaucratic burden will be so small as to be almost invisible to the naked eye.
Chris Bryant.
The mind boggles. I'm all for pragmatism because I think that's the best way that we can sort out a deal that works for Welsh lamb farmers and, for that matter, for the British car manufacturers and all the rest of it. But I want to ask him about the foreign policy elements because, on a pragmatic basis, we've always done rather well out of persuading other countries in Europe that they should adopt, for instance, sanctions against Putin, and we've tried to get people on board with our policy around Hong Kong. How are we going to be able to make sure that we can do that in the future if we've poisoned the well by a situation where we don't have any long-lasting trade deal at the end of today or the end of the week?
The right honourable gentleman does make an important point, and obviously it would be in our interest to secure a deal, but not at any price. One thing that I would say is that he's been a consistent champion for a tougher approach towards Russia and an advocate for the Magnitsky sanctions. It was the case that the Foreign Secretary also was a consistent champion for that. We adopted them. The EU followed. It's no criticism of the EU, but it is the case that we can continue to have influence. But obviously, if we do have a satisfactory arrangement with the EU, that would work for everyone.
Andrew Griffith.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that today's welcome announcement is the perfect combination of principle and pragmatism, an approach to negotiations that our businessmen take every day, that's going to serve them well as we embrace the future, and that only on that side of the House they seem to find exceptional?
Well, my honourable friend has had a brilliant business career, and he's absolutely right. You need to negotiate toughly, be prepared to be flexible in certain circumstances, but know ultimately what you want. And as we heard from the Leader of the Opposition earlier today, I'm afraid when it comes to Brexit, we still don't know what Labour want.
Patrick Grady.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm just wondering if Brexit is shaping up to be such a success. Why is it that 4.5 years after the referendum, no other European country is seeking to follow the UK out the door? Why aren't they looking at these deals that are being negotiated with envy and thinking that they want a piece of the action? Whereas in fact what's happening is that countries like Scotland are looking at the European Union and deciding that's where they want their future to be. It's the United Kingdom that's being left isolated.
What a remarkable rewriting of history. I think it's the case. Just yesterday I was watching CNN, and I saw an amazing man, 91-year-old gentleman called Martin Kenyon, one of the first people in the world to be vaccinated. And he was vaccinated here in the United Kingdom, and it's because of the United Kingdom's superb regulatory work, because of our vaccines task force, because of our NHS, because of our health secretary, that the first people in the world to be vaccinated were here in the United Kingdom. And there are vaccines in Scotland. There's vaccines in Scotland, thanks to the UK, and the rest of the world's looking on in admiration at our British NHS. And I think on today of all days, it would be nice, and to be fair, lots of Scottish nationalist ministers have made this point, that the UK government has been working in the interests of everyone, and people have been looking at Britain and saying, that's great.
Bob Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As someone that's commanded on and off a hard checkpoint on the A5 between South Tyrone and County Monaghan for up to 2 years, where we had chicanes, sangers and obstacles, can my right honourable friend assure me that on the 1st of January there'll be no sign of that hard checkpoint left?
Well, my honourable friend, like so many who served with distinction in Northern Ireland, contributed to ending terrorism. These were hard-won gains, and there will certainly be no return to physical infrastructure of the kind that he had to negotiate when he so bravely served his country.
Vera Hobhouse.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can he give me an indication when we will finish negotiating and debating Brexit, given that 10 months on from getting Brexit done, we are still debating the same issues, and he himself said in a statement today further details will be worked through in the month ahead.
Well, far be it from me to prevent Liberal Democrats talking about whatever they wish to talk about. It is the case, I recall, that the very first person, I think, in this House to argue for an in-out referendum was the former member for Sheffield Hallam, the former Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg. And it's still the case that people in the Liberal Democrats are calling for referendums. I'm a traditionalist. I love the fact that the Liberal Democrats are consistent in their determination to ensure that however many referendums we have, we must have more. I'm sure that Gladstone, Grey, Harcourt and Chamberlain would all salute the determination of the Liberal Democrats to stay true to their tradition, and whenever everyone else has settled the question, to say, let's reopen it.
Greg Smith. Madam Deputy Speaker, I very much congratulate my right honourable friend on securing this agreement. It is absolutely right that it must only be UK authorities that perform any checks. When it comes to the EU authorities supervising or observing, can he confirm to the House that they will be paying for that and they do not expect UK taxpayers to pick up the bill for their presence?
That is absolutely the case. The EU will be paying for it, and I hope that while people from the EU's agencies are in Northern Ireland, that they take advantage of Northern Ireland's wonderful hospitality as well.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and the DUP have been consistent and remain consistent that there must be no border down the Irish Sea. Can the Chancellor give me an assurance that in July 2021, the year that we mark the centenary of the Union, the good people of Strangford will have no impediment placed on them by Brussels to buying foodstuffs from fellow British citizens in England, Scotland and Wales?
Absolutely. The citizens of the beautiful Ards Peninsula will continue to enjoy the rights that we uphold as shared UK citizens.
Steve Bryan.
Thank you. My constituents will be very joyed at the changes to the Internal Market Bill, as my right honourable friend knows. The Joint Committee has clearly done its job, and showing rumours of compromise demise are greatly overstated. Now, the British government have moved and shown much seasonal goodwill, so can I ask my right honourable friend if he agrees that this announcement only truly works for us all if it's followed by good news on the wider EU-UK trade deal imminently?
This deal works in its own right. It shows the virtue of principle and pragmatism allied, but it's also the case that if we do secure a free trade agreement, that would be an additional helpful bonus.
And finally, we go to Simon Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank and congratulate my right honourable friend for arriving at the position that he has. The Good Friday Agreement is protected, the Union has been secured, and more importantly, the rule of law upheld. Can I seek his assurance that during the grace period, he and ministerial colleagues provide strong and active support to businesses of all sizes in both GB and Northern Ireland to ensure that they are able to meet the challenges of a new regime and to do so successfully?
Well, my honourable friend makes an absolutely critical point, and can I thank him and the Select Committee he chairs for the rigorous scrutiny that they've applied throughout this process, which has ensured that the government has been kept up to the mark. And he's absolutely right that concluding this agreement is just one step. We need to continue to support businesses in Northern Ireland, large and small, as they face the challenges but also take advantage of the opportunities ahead.
Thank you. I will now suspend the House for 3 minutes in order to allow members to leave safely and compliantly and to allow other members to come in. Order! Order. I call Minister James Heapy to make a statement. Mr. Heapy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With permission, I'd like to make a statement to update the House on UK support for the UN Stabilisation Mission in Mali, which supports the peace process, helping to counter the spread of instability in the Sahel. This month, 300 United Kingdom troops, led by the Light Dragoons battle group, will complete their deployment into the United Nations mission in Mali, known as MINUSMA. Over recent years, Mali has become one of the most unstable countries on the African continent. Terrorist aggression and conflict between communities has been on the rise, and the United Nations multi-dimensional integrated stabilisation mission in Mali is mandated to support the Malian people in their effort to secure sustainable peace, to support the re-establishment of state authority, protect civilians, and to promote and protect human rights in Mali. By the 22nd of December, the majority of our 300 UK Armed Forces personnel will have deployed to MINUSMA and completed quarantine. Our contingent consists of 250 troops from the Light Dragoons, the Royal Anglian Regiment, and other attached personnel, and a further 50 forming a national support element. They will soon begin operations in Mali, joining some 60 other nations contributing to the UN mission. The UK has committed to a 3-year deployment to MINUSMA, with a review to be held at the 18-month point. UK personnel will deploy on 6-month operational tours. Accordingly, the first deployment, led by the Light Dragoons, will be replaced by a second contingent, led by the Royal Anglian Regiment, in the summer of 2021. This government takes its responsibility as a permanent member of the UN Security Council seriously. Our deployment to MINUSMA reflects our continued commitment to and growing leadership in multilateralism and international peace and security. Our nation has a proud peacekeeping track record as we demonstrate Global Britain in practice. This deployment builds on a successful multi-year commitment to the UN mission in South Sudan, where UK peacekeepers were responsible for building hospitals, bridges and roads. Madam Deputy Speaker, in the Sahel region, over 15 million people need humanitarian assistance. 11 million are food insecure, and over 3 million are displaced because of the conflict. As with many conflicts around the world, women and girls in Mali are disproportionately affected by the continuing instability. The Sahel is the worst region on earth to be an adolescent girl, seeking 12 years of quality education, accounting for an astonishing 7% of the world's population of primary-age girls who are out of school. By 2030, almost 1 in 5 women aged 20 to 39 who have no education in the continent of Africa will be living in the Sahel. Mali is at the forefront of countries in the Sahel affected by instability. Terrorism and conflict is sharply on the rise. Mali has already registered more deaths due to violence this year than any previous year in the past decade. This violence is costing lives, hindering development across one of the world's poorest countries and spreading instability to the wider region. International action is the right thing to do from a humanitarian perspective, but history shows us that international efforts to restore law, order and security is also the best way to prevent unstable regions becoming safe havens for terrorist groups. It is in the UK's interests to act. Terrorist violence and conflict have risen sharply over recent years, and the permissive environment provided by the current instability in Mali and the wider region creates the space for developing threats. This harms UK interests and also those of our allies and partners, especially France and others in Europe. It is in all of our interests that we work together to protect civilians and help build a safer, healthier and more prosperous future for the region. Our contribution will provide critical capabilities to the UN mission at a vital time. We can have genuine impact on the mission's overall approach to help reduce the spread of conflict and insecurity, contribute to the protection of civilians, and support Mali's pathway to sustainable peace. This deployment is a vital part of our work in the Sahel to build stability and bolster conflict resolution, improve the humanitarian response, and strengthen partnerships between the international community and regional governments in responding to the crisis. Madam Deputy Speaker, we will be joining a UN mission led by a civilian special representative of the UN Secretary-General and an international peacekeeping force of over 60 nations led by the Swedish UN Mission Force Commander, Lieutenant General Dennis Gillenspoor. It is a truly global collaboration with contributions being made from our Western allies, including both Germany and France, and with African nations contributing large contingents to support their region's stability. The initial objective of the first rotation of troops will be to understand the operating environment so they are best placed to support the UN mission going forward. The UK task force will be under command of the Light Dragoons commanding officer. Armed with cutting-edge technology, our troops will provide a specialist reconnaissance capability which aims to improve the mission's overall performance, particularly in protecting civilians. Our contingent will offer crucial support to the mission to better understand threats and to shape the mission's response, enabling intelligence-led operations across the mission's mandate. Our MINUSMA deployment complements existing commitments we have in the region. This includes helicopter support to Operation Barkhane, the French-led counter-terrorism initiative in Africa's Sahel region. Although these two missions are complementary, they are distinct in their objectives and tactics. Our experience in Mali will also help develop our world-class training for peacekeepers that we provide each year in Africa. Our aim is that the response for more security challenges in Africa will be African-led, and we are mentoring and training others on the continent to help us achieve that goal. Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK believes in peacekeeping as a way to stabilise and contain conflict. Our contribution to MINUSMA, alongside our enduring commitment to the UN peacekeeping operations in Cyprus and Somalia, and the staff officers we have deployed to 6 other UN missions, is the UK playing its part in a multinational effort to contain the worst consequences of violent conflict and help build confidence in the political process underway, supporting longer-term peace and reconciliation. UN peacekeeping operations are currently protecting over 125 million of the world's most vulnerable people across 13 different missions, consisting of over 98,000 troops, police and civilians. Combined, they provide a critical tool in containing and reducing conflict in the world's most fragile environments. To function effectively, UN peacekeeping relies on contributions from its members, especially from more experienced militaries like the UK's. Our deployment is a highly capable contingent able to support stronger mission performance and longer-term reform. The UK's military contribution to UN peacekeeping in Mali is a clear illustration of how our defence and security capabilities can contribute to the UK's role as a force for good in the world, working hand in hand to support the government's development and diplomatic agenda. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is important to stress that deploying to MINUSMA does not come without risk. However, our forces are world-class, and we have provided them with the right training, equipment and preparation to succeed in a complex operating environment. We have taken steps to mitigate the risks, and I am confident that our troops will make the UK proud by having a strong impact on the ground in Mali. They will bolster our standing in the United Nations and will help us in our endeavours to make the UN and its peacekeeping missions as effective as possible. As a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, we are fully committed to supporting the UN's peacekeeping missions around the world and to encourage those to be as effective as possible. Our MINUSMA deployment is a key part of that commitment, and as the Prime Minister recently noted, our uplift in defence spending should allow the UK to shape international security and provide a stronger contribution to global Britain. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, may I thank all of those serving in Mali and around the world this Christmas for their service to our nation, and extend that gratitude to their families, friends and loved ones who will be celebrating Christmas in their absence. I know everyone on all sides of the House will want to wish all of our service personnel serving over Christmas a safe tour and as merry a Christmas as they can manage.
John Healy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement. It was good to have the written statement last Thursday as troops began to arrive in Mali. It's better still to have his oral statement today, with the Minister ready to answer the range of questions that arise from this new deployment. Let me say at the outset, as I said to the House on Monday, Labour strongly support this commitment of UK troops to the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali, and we do so with our eyes wide open to the risks that they face. The public expect ministers to be open about this too, so I hope the Minister will undertake to give regular reports on progress to Parliament during this deployment. He rightly says today that deploying to MINUSMA does not come without risk. The UN has described this as its most dangerous mission, with 227 personnel killed since 2013. So what assessment has he made of these risks, and what specific steps have been taken to reduce them? Last week, the French base in Mali at Gove was attacked. Where will our troops be stationed, and how secure will the British base be? The Defence Secretary has told us that this deployment, and I quote, reflects our continued commitment to multilateralism and to international peace and security. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, Britain does have this special responsibility, which we in Labour also take seriously. Too often there's been a view that somehow peacekeeping is beneath Britain. So I hope to see confirmation in the integrated review that this has changed as part of the government's plans for a post-Brexit global Britain. Certainly, as with Mali, where Britain has special military skills, we should step up. And the Light Dragoons and the Royal Anglian Regiment are filling a capability gap in Mali as long-range reconnaissance specialists. Since the government first announced the intention to deploy these troops in July 2019, however, Mali has become more complex, less stable, more violent. This deployment is rightly limited. What measures must be met for the government to judge it a success? Are there circumstances in which the government would widen the scope or increase the size of this UK military mission? And could troops in this UN deployment also serve in the distinct and complementary French-led Barkhane mission? The government has said it's, and I quote again, stepping up its engagement in the Sahel across development, diplomacy and defence pillars. The Minister says there's, rightly, very significant development interest in Mali with 6.8 million people in need of humanitarian assistance. And there are also significant security concerns with drugs cartels, arms traffickers and Al-Qaeda and Islamic State terror groups all active in the region. So when coordinated action and help is clearly needed, the deep cuts made in the spending review to the Conflict, Stability and Security Fund could not have come at a worse time for the Sahel. Will the costs of this Mali deployment be met from this fund? How much in development aid is planned for Mali and the other Sahel countries over the 3-year period of this military deployment? And how are Britain's development, diplomatic and defence activities being coordinated within government? Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, Britain's responsibilities as a leading UN member are being met with this Mali mission, alongside our continuing commitment to peacekeeping operations in 8 other countries around the world. I pay tribute to our armed forces personnel who serve in these missions. They will, as the Minister says, continue to make the UK proud.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his positive response to the statement. I think, as we were saying in the Remembrance debate a few weeks ago, it matters enormously as you deploy on missions such as this to see support on both sides of the House for what you're going out to do. He rightly asked some questions which I'll do my best to answer, starting with, of course, an intent to regularly update the House, either verbally, although that met with no support from our honourable friend from Beckenham, but to update the House regularly on the progress of the mission and the threat as it evolves. He's absolutely right to pick up on the line in my statement, Madam Deputy Speaker, that says that this mission is not without risk. This is a dangerous part of the world in which to be operating. It is because it is such a dangerous part of the world that the case for being there as part of a peacekeeping force is so easily made. And we should be clear that despite all of the training, all of the equipment, all of the mitigations that were put in place, and I'll explain some of those in a second, our troops are accepting a risk to life and limb in serving in the Sahel, and we thank them for that. We genuinely believe that it is in the interest of the UK and the people of Mali that we contribute to that mission. We've recognised that in previous deployments, perhaps there has been a sort of gung-ho willingness to expand the mission very quickly and get on with things without fully understanding the realities of the threat on the ground and how that manifests itself in relation to military operations. So in this first rotation, the first 6 months, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will be expecting the Light Dragoons battle group to deploy and to find its way in the immediate vicinity of Gao, the city in which the UN camp that they'll be based is in. And if over time we come to understand that actually it's possible for them to operate at range, then we will look at that and consider on its merits, depending on what the mission design is from the UN force commander. But our intention is to find our way slowly, to build our confidence and our understanding, and then to grow the mission within the confines of MINUSMA. It's important to stress that there's no UK agency in being able to just decide what we do. We are under the command of the UN force commander. The honourable gentleman asked me about the camp. It is a brand new camp. It is indeed in the UN super camp at Gao, but that camp is protected by a German early warning system called Mantis, which for the IDF, the indirect fire attack that the honourable gentleman mentioned in his reply, Mantis picked that up, which allows people in the camp to take cover and adopt all of their drills when there's incoming indirect fire. And that, sadly, as a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, is just a reality of being in camps in those places. But these early warning systems give people great confidence that they can find cover before the rounds start landing. This is indeed a complex mission. The UN's mission is made all the more challenging as a consequence of the changing political tides in Mali. There was a coup only 4 months ago. And that means that I think the military mission as designed by the UN force commander and the political mission has some work to do to evolve to react to those new political realities in Mali. Hence our caution over the speed at which we unleash the Light Dragoons into their mission. We want to see how things develop, and we'll update him and colleagues as that happens. There is no scope to widen the size of our force. We are limited by what the UN requires of us, particularly for that, and there's no scope for us to decide unilateral peacekeeping contingents. And indeed, the missions are so different. Barkhane is a more offensive counter-terrorism operation chasing both JNIM and ISGS, not only around Mali, but Burkina Faso and Niger as well. MINUSMA is a Mali-only peacekeeping operation led by the UN. He finally asked me about funding £80 million over 3 years, which is indeed funded by CSSF. Madam Deputy Speaker, it will matter enormously to people deploying on this operation to see the tone in which these exchanges have happened. Our intent is to keep the House as informed as best we can. This is a dangerous mission, but our people are well trained, well equipped, they're ready, they're up for it, and I wish them a good tour.
Tobias Elwood.
Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I join the opposition and indeed the front bench in wishing our forces well and a very safe tour? The Minister speaks about the Sahel and wanting to increase our profile there. The West has been without resolve, I'm afraid, in this area. It has been that hidden conflict, and I'm pleased to see us want to close down this permissive environment that the Minister spoke about, of extremism, criminality, human trafficking, and indeed regional conflict spilling out beyond the Sahel. But I do hope this commitment is matched by a greater Western resolve to tackle the underlying causes to those issues, because not through military means alone will we solve the challenges that are there. But I must tell the Minister, and I'm pleased that the Defence Secretary is in his place, I'm sorry to learn that as we take a step forward with greater resolve in the Sahel, we are taking a retrograde step back here with talk of reductions to our reserve forces and indeed their training. These are the very people, Madam Deputy Speaker, that actually are the infill to the regular forces that go out to these places. There's not an operational overseas tour that I've been on where under my command I didn't have reservists there as well. I do hope the Minister, as we step forward with greater resolve on the international stage, we will think more carefully about these cuts to our reserves. Thank you.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm delighted to say that there are a number of reservists within the deployment to Mali, and their skill set is well valued, and they will do a great job. The Secretary of State, me, and other ministers of the MOD have all served alongside our fantastic reservists in various theatres over the course of our own military service. Their value is undeniable, and they are an integral part of the force. My right honourable friend is right to say that to some degree this is a hidden conflict, although actually with the drawdown of troops in Afghanistan and Iraq, this is now the largest Western troop deployment on earth in the Sahel. It is, however, incomplete no matter what the size of the force unless there is a political and diplomatic effort that goes around that response, and he's right to encourage that not just here in terms of our own diplomatic and aid effort, but within the United Nations and across all of the troop contributing nations, that the political effort matches the military one.
Now we go to Glasgow, to Carol Monaghan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement. It is important with issues such as this that the House is kept fully informed. The SNP firmly support the deployment of UK personnel supporting the UN mission in Mali. It's important that the UK continues to promote global justice and peace. I support the Minister from a humanitarian perspective and echo his point that international efforts to restore law, order and security are also the best way to prevent unstable regions becoming safe havens for terrorist groups. There are many areas of concern in Mali that need to be addressed by this international action, including food security, health and child protection. This conflict has led to displacement and death. And most disturbing are the UN reports that rape is being used as a weapon of war, with both women and young girls the target of these attacks. It is therefore conspicuous that while the UK is sending personnel to the area, which of course is most welcome, it is also cutting aid by 30%. These two issues cannot be considered separate when we're looking at the humanitarian response. The Minister has stated that the UK troops will support this government's development and diplomatic agenda as a force for good in the world. With the cuts to the aid described, can the Minister explain how these cuts could impact the UN mission in Mali? Can he detail whether any civilian support has been cut on the ground, including those working with victims of sexual violence? Given the increase in terrorist activity and instability in the region, what safeguards are being considered for the personnel who are being deployed? At what point will our troops be withdrawn? And what are the success criteria for this to happen? And finally, I would just like to pay tribute on behalf of myself and those on my benches to all those serving in such missions, especially all those personnel who will be away from their loved ones over the Christmas period.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the ODA point, Madam Deputy Speaker, rather a lot of MOD activity, which has huge humanitarian advantage, wasn't counted under the ODA definition. And we're rather proud of the amount that we do that doesn't make it into the accounting against that budget. May I thank her also for raising the importance of human security as a part of this mission. I had the pleasure the other week of doing a round table with the Countess of Wessex and the Vice Chief of the Defence Staff, using Mali as a case study in exactly how the UK should lead in human security and the role of the MOD and our armed forces in that leadership. She will be pleased to know that within the deployment to MINUSMA are specialist human security officers who will add immeasurably to the emotional intelligence of the deployment and a recognition of the needs of women and other minorities within the community so that human security can be integral to the UK's effort within MINUSMA. She asks about the term of the mission and the success criteria. This is very, very different from Iraq and Afghanistan, where the circumstances for our withdrawal were principally around political intent in London. We've signed up for a 3-year commitment to the UN MINUSMA mission. We said that we will review that commitment after 18 months to check that we still think that it's the right contribution for us to be making. But it is a time-limited commitment to the UN, and we leave at the end of it, just as we did very successfully from South Sudan earlier in the year.
Roman Chishti.
To speak by way of a declaration, I am a reservist. I welcome the statement by the Minister. Terrorists and insurgents are exploiting open borders in this region to smuggle weapons, arms and drugs. Does the British government support the French initiative to increase regional coordination through the G5 joint force to deploy 5,000 personnel from neighbouring 5 states? And with France's key role in intelligence in the Sahel region, what does the Minister make of the point made by some to include France in the Five Eyes intelligence sharing system?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the last point may require a statement entirely in its own right, but France is clearly an important partner in the international activity within the Sahel. Really important, however, to note that the French-led Barkhane mission is entirely separate to MINUSMA. Now, the Secretary of State and I both participate in conferences with other NATO defence ministers and defence ministers from across the Sahel, so we are aware of and support what France is doing to generate more mass to its Barkhane mission. But really important to note that that is separate, Madam Deputy Speaker, to what we're doing with MINUSMA.
Gavin Robertson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And as has been mentioned, I do want to thank the Minister for providing such a comprehensive statement this afternoon so soon on the back of a written ministerial statement last week. I think it is deeply welcome. I want to place on record our support for our service personnel as they deploy. The Minister will know through correspondence from the Defence Select Committee and in media reports that there are some concerns about the availability of the appropriate equipment for the circumstances. And so I do wish to ask the Minister to place on record publicly this afternoon that those who are prepared to put themselves in harm's way will have the adequate and appropriate protection for the situation in which they will find themselves.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The environment in Mali, it requires a balance between the ballistic protection against the threat of IEDs versus an environmental challenge where heavy rain and mud can very easily lead to heavy vehicles getting bogged in. It's our assessment that Foxhound, Ridgeback, Coyote and Jackal, all of which were purchased for the Afghanistan deployment and have proven themselves against a far more severe IED threat than the one that currently exists within Mali, and have been upgraded in the decades since, that they achieve that balance between the ballistic protection required against an IED threat such as this and the environmental challenge of such weather as we're likely to experience in Mali.
Suzanne Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is the latest in a long line of peacekeeping and humanitarian missions undertaken by our armed forces with the support of this Conservative government. Will my honourable friend agree with me that thanks to this government's support of our armed forces in both words and in actions, they've been able to deliver an immeasurable impact on the lives of those most in need of security and stability across the world?
Well, yes, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would. This is an addition to Defence's contribution to the life of the United Kingdom this year, of which we're very proud. They will be, within the next week or two, they will be actively involved in peacekeeping operations in Mali, in addition to all that Defence is doing at home in response to COVID, in addition to all that the Royal Navy is doing in protecting the UK's interests around the world, and what we're doing in Afghanistan, and what we're doing in Iraq, and. Our armed forces are a fantastic example of the very best of British, and we're delighted within this government to be supporting them in their endeavours.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I also pay tribute to troops involved in this deployment and others globally at this time. Now, reports from the UNHCR that 230 children were recruited by armed groups in Mali in the first half of 2020 alone, compared to 215 cases in all of 2019, are deeply concerning. So can I ask the Minister what steps the Government are taking with international partners to help protect vulnerable children from being taken advantage of in this way and ensure the sustainability that he referred to in his statement?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. She makes a very, very important point. The recruitment of children to the conflict is something that we abhor. And I refer her to the answer that I gave to the SNP spokesman around our enthusiasm for growing our human security capability. It's exactly this sort of thing that those human security officers are within the force to deliver, to recognise the needs of women, to protect vulnerable children, and to make sure that the needs of the whole community are considered as we go through peacekeeping missions such as this.
Gagan Mohindra.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I also welcome this statement? At their heart, all UK defence operations are focused on building stability and security worldwide, from which all nations and people are able to benefit. Will my right honourable friend, the honourable friend, assure me and this House that thanks to the record spending review, we will be able to continue to contribute to global safety and prosperity in the years to come?
Well, Madam Speaker, I can. And what we aim to be doing is, through more forward presence of our armed forces around the world, find ourselves in a position where we can more easily respond to the needs of different regions where there are UK interests, or where the UK simply needs to be a force for the good alongside friends and allies in the international community. This IR gets after exactly the problem he poses, and we're very excited about what the opportunities within the IR mean for us to do the right thing in different parts of the world in the future.
Stuart MacDonald.
Speaker, Mali, of course, is one of the world's poorest countries, but it seems to be the vast network of small gold mines that is attracting jihadists and other terrorist organisations there. So what can be done as part of this international effort to try and get these gold mines put to use in getting the countries out of poverty rather than funding terrorism?
Well, Madam Speaker, if I'm honest, the Honourable Gentleman raises a point that I haven't come across in all of the briefings that I've had before the deployment. I will, of course, go and look into that dimension, but I'm not sure that these terrorist groups are motivated simply by any sort of pecuniary advantage from securing the mines that he mentions. These are people who are ideologically opposed to any sort of religious freedom, any sort of social freedom, and I fear that their determination to disrupt and to be violent would endure irrespective of what natural assets lay beneath the earth. But I will, of course, go off and inform myself.
Bob Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister says that this force of 300 will form a specialist reconnaissance capability. In order to do that, the troops will have to speak to the local people. And the local people, 5 to 10% of them speak the official language, which is French, the rest don't. When I took 900 soldiers to Bosnia, I required 20 interpreters minimum. I suspect we'll need at least 7 for this force. Could I ask my honourable friend whether there is an ability to recruit locally interpreters, and whether interpreters in both French and local languages, and quite a few of them, have been thought about? I'm sure the answer is yes.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. He's absolutely right. Interpreters are an essential part of any population-centric military mission. There are French-speaking personnel within the force itself, and we will be recruiting local interpreters to join the force. Crucially, these won't just be male interpreters that stand on the shoulder of the male platoon commander. These will be female interpreters that work alongside the human security officers, so that actually we are able to engage with all parts of the community in the course of our mission.
Jess Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and we all send our best wishes to our troops on this mission. The Sahel is a complicated place, and it's got a lot of long-term problems, both in terms of security and long-term development and governance. Now, I appreciate the Minister says that this is a 3-year deployment, but I wonder if he can comment on his confidence that the UN have criteria and definitions of success that we can be confident in, and an exit strategy for the mission.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Algeria Accords still set the conditions for both the political and military response of the United Nations. I don't think anybody involved in the UN political mission in Bamako would dispute that the coup and political instability in Mali over a number of years has made the political mission very challenging. But that doesn't affect necessarily the duration of this military commitment. The way that UN peacekeeping missions work is that you sign up to do your turn, and we have done so. That notwithstanding, we of course want to see greater success from the political mission and then enduring political stability in Bamako so that that UN mission can succeed.
James Sunderland.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is not of course for MPs to dig into the tactical weeds of military deployments. But given the vast lines of communication in Mali, could the Minister please assure the House that British forces will be operating with sufficient mass, force protection and an effective reserve to deal with a potent insurgency?
Madam Deputy Speaker, there speaketh a voice of great experience, and his caution is well noted. He will be reassured to know, Madam Deputy Speaker, that, as I said in my statement, we are going to start with the first rotation focusing on understanding the ground immediately around Gao, and as we develop that understanding, grow in confidence and develop our in-country ability to support ourselves at greater range, then we will expand the mission as the UN mission commander requires.
Lloyd Russell-Moyle.
I very much welcome this deployment, as I think everyone here does. But of course, in the 90s, Britain was one of the largest troop deploying nations for UN peacekeeping forces, and now we are not. This is 5% or thereabouts of what Bangladesh, the largest troop deploying nation, one of the poorest countries in the world, contributes. And whilst it's welcome the money that the government have agreed to invest in our armed forces, it does not include an increase of personnel and does not include an increase of reservists. In fact, the opposite. So will the Minister look at actually changing some of that? And will he consider the fact that troops might help stop violence, but they don't bring peace? Development does. So what's the government doing to make sure development money pours into this country so that our troops can leave it stable?
So, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the last point first, I don't think anybody in uniform within the MOD, nor even the MOD ministers, would pretend that a military solution uniquely is the answer to any of the world's problems. Of course, the military set the conditions within which prosperity in a political process can succeed. He also makes an excellent point that the campaigns of the last few years in the Balkans, in Iraq and Afghanistan have consumed UK military effort to the detriment of our contribution to peacekeeping missions. And one of the great opportunities that is afforded by the end of major combat deployments to both Iraq and Afghanistan is that we now have the mass available to support very worthwhile missions like this one in Mali.
Now we go to Blackpool, to Scott Benton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In order to ensure that this peacekeeping mission does not become permanent, I ask my honourable friend what steps he is taking in conjunction with our partners in the UN to support the government and armed forces in Mali with investment, equipment and training so they can tackle the jihadist threat in the longer term.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is not part of the UN's MINUSMA mission to explicitly be developing the capability of the Malian armed forces, but clearly that has to be a part of delivering a lasting peace in Mali, and the political mission does of course have within it security sector reform. I've said that our exit from Mali is time limited based on the 3-year commitment, but what we hope to be doing as part of the MOD's wider effort in West Africa is during that time developing the capability of other West African states so that they are better able to replace us in 3 years' time as the troop contributing nations in Mali. We think that that is the right way to both deliver a success within the mission itself, but also, after we've gone, to ensure the mission continues to succeed in our absence.
And now we go to Linlithgow, to Martin Day.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to extend my wishes to everyone involved for a successful deployment in what is seen as the UN's most dangerous peacekeeping mission. According to the UN, about 12.9 million people are affected by this crisis in Mali, with 6.8 million in need of humanitarian assistance. Does the Minister agree with me that this situation